And we are live with Peaker's Advantage, Episode 7. Our guest I was going to say this week, but it's really not a weekly thing. So this episode is Thoorin. Thoorin, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. How was everybody's holidays? We'll start off with that, I guess.
It was great.
It was all right.
Well, that's great.
Still doing interviews, still doing videos. What do you want?
I don't know.
Still finding.
Everyone just did the same stuff over and over again.
Exactly. I'm sure you guys are still playing fucking esports games. So.
Well, honestly, I didn't play CS for like a.
I didn't play CS for like 2 weeks actually, from like Christmas until like January 2nd. Well, I guess that's 1 week, but a little bit.
You know what I also
Christmas.
realized that was actually the first time in my entire career since I started playing CS that I've taken a break that was a week long without even looking at a game. Like
wasn't there that whole break that you took when you were in that team TSM? You know, like you never used to get into any of the lands.
A whole year
used
break.
Used to sit next to Semphis and then he like shot called the game.
Talking
and
about? We
you were
qualified
like
for stuff all the time.
Yeah.
We went to a billion lands.
Oh right, you mean like all the small lands? My mistake.
No,
Sorry.
ECS.
I watched the tier 1 land.
Bitch.
Tier 1 land. Sorry.
Tier 1 ECS.
Yeah. Oh, so there's
Tier
ECS in E-League, right? Anymore?
Yeah. And
Yes.
then,
Wait, was there anything else?
I didn't go
So
to
I
any
don't-
of those.
what?
The minor.
How many big lands do I have to qualify for to be acceptable for Thoorin?
Minus.
Because
You
you can't
more
say
than two
none,
in
and
a
then
year.
I bring up 2, and then
More than
it's
two in a year.
not enough.
Right, Semphis. Some of these are jokes, mate. It was something of
No,
cold
but you
banter,
do that
know?
all the time.
I
You do
didn't
that all the
actually
time.
believe. Well, here's the thing. First of all, I didn't actually believe FNS didn't play in TSM. Like, I know he definitely joined the server and pressed mouse
Yes,
one a
I
few times.
realized
No?
that.
Probably did.
I
Secondly, I mean, actually, I brought this up to Davey before. Listen, I planted the seeds for this, but I did tell Davey about a classic tweet.
I got it. I'll put it up on the screen
Maybe
right
you'll
now.
bring it up on screen now.
I got it up on the screen right now.
Because clearly this is something that triggers Semphis. So if he wants to talk about it, we can do it.
Okay, I'll read it out. I'll read it out really quick.
Get into it real quickly, guys.
I'll
Let's
do it in
warm
one
up a
sec. Let me
little
I gotta put it on top of everything. All right. So the tweet.
Listen,
The tweet
FNS, I'm
is-
putting the show, mate. I'm marquee. What can I tell you?
Honestly, I can like the more that you guys are going at each other. Like I didn't go to any of those big lands, so the more you guys are talking, I actually did go to 0 of those lands.
Where's
so-
You were playing with Team Canada.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we got
No,
top
one
8 or
time
something.
Davey made it out of groups. Was with Team Canada.
Yeah, that's
Plus-
why.
Yeah, I thought your team was actually pretty decent. Didn't you lose to like Sweden or something?
Yeah, we did.
Mhm.
Pretty close. Wasn't bad.
That
Who did
Swedish
we
team
even
was
beat? I don't even remember. Like Belgium and someone else.
Norway. I think.
Oh.
I think it was Norway. Anyways, I'm going to read it out loud, even though everyone else on the screen has seen it here for a while, and they're not great producing on my part. But Thoorin says, when you consider how much you get from sticker money, even for 9th to 16th, every team should boot camp in EU before the major. Corey replied, so losing to Fnatic and Hellraisers means you're shit? It's
There's
fine.
more to that
I doubt
tweet,
you
though.
even watch the games. I just clicked on the thread, and this is what came up.
No,
Goddamn.
he said something else like more cunty, like as usual.
Oh, I mean, it's not at all cunty, that original tweet. Presumably, me and I had a different tweet that probably said something about Cloud9, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's something missing in
Sure.
the thing.
I mean, listen, I haven't obscured anything, man. I haven't like edited Twitter. I don't have
No,
access to the
I'm not
Matrix
saying
or
you
anything,
did.
you know.
I'm just saying that.
Yeah,
like
listen.
the context is weird.
Yes,
looking
I've
at
no
it.
doubt that was the tweet after I probably said something like Cloud9 wasn't a good team and whatever.
I have a
Yeah.
I have a really funny. It's really funny to me anyway. I don't know if everyone else is gonna find this really funny, but this was at MLG Columbus, and we had already just got knocked out. We were awful, and then we're at like the main event. We're at the venue, and we were just like walking up to the player area, and a bunch of people had stopped us to do signatures and stuff. So we're signing stuff. And Duncan, you were over on like our left, like 30 feet to our left, I think, and you were doing signatures too. And I wasn't really paying much attention or whatever. And then some kid comes over. He was probably like 13. I don't want to be trying to be too mean. He was a small kid though.
Okay,
He
where are
was
we
a
going here?
No,
Okay.
listen. Yeah, so this kid comes up, and he's like visibly upset, like not like crying or anything, but you could tell like by his facial expressions, like he was kind of just like soured, you know. And
Okay.
so I'm signing. So he asked me to sign something, and I was signing it, and then he says to me out of nowhere, he's like, "Thorn was talking shit about you guys." And I was like, and I just started laughing. I was like, "What did he say?" And he was like, "Well, he was done signing stuff, and he said, all right, everyone else left in the line can go get your signature from all the shit Splice players over there." And I thought that was fucking hilarious. I thought that was
Banter,
so
isn't
funny.
it?
No, I thought it was so funny.
People take these things stuff too seriously, don't they? Come
I
on,
thought it was so funny. I thought it was
what was
hilarious.
banter?
No,
And
I
let's
thought
be
that was
real,
quality.
that wasn't exactly the best tournament for Splice.
It wasn't. No, that wasn't. Well, not
I
exactly.
don't know. I
the
feel like
best
if
tournament for Splice.
if I or my team plays bad and then people talk shit, I don't really care. But if
Okay.
if we do like beyond what the other team expected, normally you don't get shit anyway, right? Like if for example I make a team right now, like a team with a bunch of rejects, and then we qualify for EPL and do a bunch of shit, no one's gonna say anything bad. Whereas when you have high expectations or decent expectations and then you suck, you're gonna get shit, right? So you just kind of have to accept
Yes.
it, regardless of what form it's in or who says it. So
I always think it's funny when people talk. Like even when people talk shit about me, when I see people talking shit about each other, I always think it's funny. Unless it's just like dumb, like stuff like your shit. Then it's like, well, that's what was the
Yes.
point in even saying that? Like that would like what was the point of that?
No, the funny thing is, like, that's something actually that I've always thought was kind of mischaracterized about me as a person. Is people think that I just want to talk trash, but no one can talk trash to me. Like, I don't know what universe they've been in. Maybe they just weren't around in the old days. Absolutely, everyone can talk shit back to me. I love trash talk. That's the whole thing. It's fun.
It is fun.
By the way, if someone gets me and it's actually funny, fair play. They get me, you know. Like, I thought that one. It was a couple of years ago now, where there was like I think it was maybe Face It Stage 2 from 2015, the one that TSM won and Cloud9 was in the final, where that was the one where I couldn't go because I was in Korea, I think. And so Henry G did some like impression of me where he had like a beard that he took out from the under the. You can look at it on YouTube; it's on there somewhere. And he just does this like stupid impression where he's like, "Oh, Nips here, are they probably just shit, aren't they?" or whatever. It was pretty funny actually. It was like he nailed it. It was pretty good. I was laughing. I thought it was fun.
No, whenever someone comes up with like, because that was just like. I didn't expect, like, I didn't see it coming, and this kid was just telling me that what you said. I thought it was fucking priceless. I thought it was great.
I didn't realize I disillusioned the youth so much. You know, I never seen me know it was bad.
No, that's what I mean. He wasn't like sad, but you could tell that there was like you could tell he was like there was something like that he like wanted to say or whatever.
well, I think you have the rep because on the internet everyone's salty and nobody can like see the tone that you're saying it in or like hear the tone. Whereas like if in real life, if you went up to like Apex and said, "Dude, you're shit" or something, he wouldn't like yell at you or get upset. He'd probably just go back at you. So
yes. Which, by the way, is obviously also part of the issue. Is that if you on Twitter, you can't tell what anyone's tone was. You can't even tell if there's sort of like wink, wink, nudge. You can't, can you? Even if you do a little smiley, it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, I mean, Kanji could have just been joking around with me, you know.
He didn't really want to kill you, Finesse. It was banter.
Well, everyone took it all seriously.
I can't believe everybody overreacted.
I'm pretty sure he would have stopped short of murder.
No, for sure.
Well,
you
never know.
It might have taken him close, but I think he would have stopped before murder.
Yeah. Well, you never know. The one I did feel bad for is when I kind of felt bad when this happened, like when Cold called that kid a faggot on Twitter. And I sat there and I was like, yeah, you're not really supposed to do that, but it's Cold, so.
Deleted his Twitter.
That's like that is actually when he deleted Twitter afterwards. Sadly, that's like a classic example as well of where like we all like I might be wrong here. I don't claim to be an expert on Brazilian culture, but I'm gonna go ahead and guess he didn't mean like you are a homosexual. I fucking despise those. Like, no, obviously he meant like what the original term was meant to mean, which is just like you are a weak-willed person who I do not respect. You know, like he obviously wasn't really going that ham.
No,
because what's mad is
actually very few people on the internet really mean that you're a gay.
It's just a problem. It's just a problem when you're representing an org, right? Because
By the way, I totally agree with that. Like, if you're going to do things professionally, yeah, you shouldn't be using that term in that sense. But it's also ridiculous when people like all these instances, like Semphis says here, 99% of the times a gamer's ever said that, it was just shit talk. Like, they weren't in any way being homophobic.
I hate when people say stuff like, I've lost all respect for you now. It's like, come on, grow up. Like, fucking grow up. I don't care if you lost fucking respect for me. I don't give a shit. Fucking grow up.
You know, you've crossed the line that you can never come back from. I'll never forget that tweet you did. You are dead to me forever.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. That stuff drives me crazy. But whatever, I just laugh about it. That's all you can do.
But yeah, back to your original question. My holiday was great.
Yeah, was it?
Fantastic.
Do you celebrate Christmas?
I don't, but I
didn't
celebrate with a bunch of white people. So that's why I just leave the house.
Oh, really?
So
white people know how to do Christmas.
Dude, they really do.
Why don't your family celebrate Christmas? Like, I would have thought, since you're in, where is it, Canada somewhere? I mean, it's fun, so why don't they just adopt it? Just have a free holiday?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, they don't go as hard, you know? And, like, for me, so I just, like, go with my friends and, like, celebrate with them and stuff and get them presents and stuff. I still get my parents presents and stuff. It's just, they don't go, like, get a Christmas tree and, like, it just isn't as festive.
I guess it's not their tradition, so
Right,
they're not
exactly.
missing
They're
out,
not
right?
as used to it, but for me, like I'm whitewashed, so like I love that shit. So I'm like, all right, let's go. So I was just like, plus I get to go on vacation to like somewhere warm, so that's nice too. Like I went to Florida and the weather was like amazing, and then I came back here and there was a blizzard. So yeah,
It's like the coldest weather it's been here in forever. It's
I
awful.
landed
Christmas is
literally
supposed to
into
be
a blizzard.
cold. It's supposed to have snow. That's the whole point.
No, fuck off. I have like this.
No.
It looks like just a wasteland behind me. Like there's like I have like a whole. The entire lake is frozen out behind me. It's just a complete
I don't
wasteland.
know. If you go
out there.
somewhere warm, it's not Christmas to me.
There's
so
people that
whatever.
are driving back and forth along the lake. Not
Yeah.
right now, but it's absolutely awful. I hate
See,
it.
the funny thing is, you're complaining about that, but in England, right, it's very variable as to whether it snows
Yeah.
in winter. Like sometimes it does. Like I remember when I was a kid, it used to happen sometimes. But everyone in England hopes it snows, especially for Christmas. That's the whole fucking point, isn't it? It's like that makes you feel so cozy, etc.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to disclose this or not, but which part of England are you from? Are you from the?
Oh, I've already told people I'm from the northeast, which is the reason why I can tell you that is because it's the one area that has no impact on esports whatsoever. And until Metis Vince came along, I think I was the only person to ever come from that area where it was even known in esports, basically.
Right. So it's more likely to snow up in the northeast, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my family's from like Birmingham, so it's just pretty much just gross and awful there all the time.
Just grey.
Yeah, it's just an awful.
Just
place
grey
to
all
be.
the time.
Yeah. No, just a shitty city. Yeah. So that's
So how far are you from where Broadchurch was filmed? Because that place is really nice.
I don't know. I'm not sure where that is.
It's
I'll
like
have a
an English TV show. Let me check. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. I'm afraid.
The only
Peaky
English TV
Blinders
show I think I
season
know
4
is
is
Peaky
out.
Blinders. Yeah, that's the only one I know.
And I'm
Peaky
waiting.
Blinders is Birmingham. Yeah,
that's
that's like the middle of the country, basically. I mean, it's slightly below, but they call it the Midlands. Let's have a
Yeah.
look whereabouts it's supposed to be. Fuck is the Jurassic Coast? I don't know what that is. I'm having a look now.
Well, Peaky Blinders is one of my favorite shows of all time. I think it's up
It's a
there
fun show.
on
Sure, yeah.
like for me, like like Game of Thrones is #1. I know that's super generic, but whatever. I don't give a fuck. That's
The
like
Oh, by the way,
2019
isn't it?
book, but-
Here's an interesting detail that a lot of people don't know. So, first of all, you know the map in Game of Thrones of Westeros is based basically on the map of England.
Yep.
The whole point, even of the wall, is we have a wall. It's obviously not a massive ice wall. It's a tiny one.
No, it's a
built
tiny
by the
little
Romans
brick,
to keep the
yeah.
slots out. Yeah.
I don't
But
know that.
also, likewise, and detail people don't know, which is actually quite clever about how they made that show, is that depending on where the character's supposed to come from, they got actors that had those sorts of regional accents. So, for example, the character who is closest to where I come from and who has the accent that's the most similar is the guy, the Onion Knight, like Stannis Baratheon's like right hand man. You know, that guy has an accent. I mean, not as bad as mine because mine's sort of like tamed over the years from esports, but that's basically where he comes from.
Thor,
Yeah,
I
I've
have
actually-
an idea for you.
Come on.
Oh, I
It's
can't
gonna
wait.
make you so much money, dude. All right, so this is what you gotta do. So you know how you make YouTube videos and stuff. You can have another series
Okay.
where your controversial tweets, you explain them. So like from top one,
Yes.
so I guess
Okay.
1 to 10,
Right.
like your most controversial ones, or the ones that got you the most popularity or whatever, the most likes, most retweets, whatever, or even ones that like a lot of pros responded to and freaked out about. You could explain those in your videos.
That's a
or,
good
like,
concept, actually.
What
Yeah.
you were thinking about, dude.
I actually had something along those lines, believe it or not. I have a concept like that because when I do like Thoorin versus Reddit, I actually was thinking not that long ago, like I should expand that. So I did a couple where
Yeah.
it was like that, but you know, I did a theme to it. So I did one recently where I took all the comments where like, because on Reddit, there's like a certain group of people who just hate Simple and think he's like overrated and not that good a player and all sorts of bizarre conspiracy theories. So I did a whole episode that was just like addressing that. Well, likewise, I actually,
always get 30 kills.
I know,
Which is always
obviously,
must be
you know,
awful.
well,
to
here's
have
the thing,
it.
Semphis, the excuses they give are hilarious. Like they'll say stuff like, "Well, it's because the rest of his team aren't good enough, so you know no one can take the rest of those
Yeah.
kills." It's like, come on, mate. I'd like to see anyone else just dropping 30 all the time as the best.
And
teams
then
in the
they
world.
join a pug and they cry that their teammates aren't good
I
enough.
know,
So.
it's mental, isn't it? But anyway, the point I was making, FNS, is I actually am going to do a mini version like that where it's like me versus myself, basically. But
Yeah, well,
you're right. I was going to just do
let's-
general ones, but yeah, I should get the controversial ones. You're right.
No, yeah, because like at the end of the day, it's a lot of the times I see you responding and responding and responding to like the same people. And Lurpus is the same thing. And I'm just like, you guys could just make a video instead of like after
Right,
a
yes.
while of like constantly just responding to people, and you only have a certain amount of characters to do it. It's just easier to make a video and explain because a lot of people get pretty pissed off.
Yeah.
At stuff that you guys say.
Plus, it is hilarious that there are a lot of people where you would think logically, right? When someone is on Twitter, but they also do like videos, obviously some of my videos are long as fuck as well, I'm long-winded as fuck, and does event stuff, you would think logically, right, that the thing you'd put the least stock in is the tweet that's like 10 words, right? People go the other way because they have the feeling that they dislike you. That's where they put the most stock is in the tweet. They don't care about the video that comes later. Super lot. So sadly, a lot of people are like, yeah, but who cares if he's all right elsewhere? He's just on
because it's like, easier to understand for them, right? Because it's 10 words. They're like, oh yeah, okay, I got it.
It's not blame for misunderstanding either. Like you can't know, as you said before, you can't know someone's tone or what they really meant by something. It's just that's. And by the way, this is what I get. This is the one thing I guess does mildly tilt me. That is the point of Twitter as well. You're not supposed to be able to explain yourself. You know when people do like a huge chain of tweets, like 10 tweets? Yeah. Just write an article, mate. That's not what Twitter's for. It's supposed to be a tweet, which essentially, I once made this point. I actually think part of why we all like Twitter is that you misunderstand people. If people actually sat down and said, like, right, here's my thoughts on this, and here's a 20-minute thing of it, right? I wouldn't watch most of them. I'd be like, I can't be fucking bothered. But if someone does one tweet and it's vaguely worded so that I don't like it, I'll probably be like, what the fuck do you mean by that? It gets you riled up, you know, it gets you going. It's fun. Right. It's almost the point to be misunderstood in a weird way.
I like how Twitter works like that.
Corey. Corey told me I don't watch any of the games.
I like the only thing I don't understand is there's no way that you could actually like follow as many esports as you do. Like,
do you want to talk about this topic, Sam? Do you want to?
Well, I mean, like I know you can look at stat boards and you can kind of get a general overview, but like I'll see you tweet that players are shit. Within like 20 minutes, there's no way you watched like all 3 of them play unless you got like a 5-monitor setup and you're like over here just fucking checking it all out. And I mean, like even then you're not paying full attention, and it's like I don't know. I just think like a lot of people, you specifically, also like you just go off stats a lot, and you're like, oh, look at this player, 8 and 20, shit. Like I've seen you do it.
What do you mean you've seen me do it? What, you have a spy cam in my house, do you?
No, I mean, like I've seen you tweet that a player is bad just because he has bad stats or play stats.
No, I probably mentioned the stat in the tweet. Yeah. Here's the thing. By the way, I actually agree with you. This is one of the biggest problems in esports. Actually, is that almost every big esports game, logistically, it's impossible to watch everything, and yet lots of people are in a position where you actually have to address lots of topics for games you didn't watch or tournaments you didn't pay much attention to. Like I'm surprised that you think that I like pretend to have watched these games. I don't. Like, if someone asks me, did you watch this, like okay, DreamHack,
but my point is that, like, I didn't really. Like, say there's a League, an Overwatch, and a CS, right? You could pick one, right? You could watch one. Maybe you watch a second one in between games or something.
I'll go ahead and cut you off just to say, first of all, I don't watch most of the games live. I watch most of my games from VOD. And secondly, I know a lot of people only discovered this now, but you can put the VOD to like 2 times speed. So I skip through all the other shit. It's like you're back in the day watching a demo, you know, you fast forward through round until you get the part you want. Secondly, I also, because you're right, I do cover a lot of esports games. In most games I cover, I don't watch like the whole tournament every match. No, I just pick like the matches that seem to make sense or had an interesting aspect, or I follow one team. Therefore, I get a sense of what they're like versus certain opponents, you know. And by the way, I've definitely never pretended I watch all the games. I'll totally say if I didn't watch a match.
No, I know, but
that's particular instance. Okay, you got triggered there, right? But what I don't understand about that instance is where you said you didn't watch it there, right? You exaggerated there. Like, do you really imagine that the major I was working at on the desk, I didn't even watch the games at that major? That's what you're going to claim. Yeah?
You see.
Come on.
I would be careful here.
Going here. No, come on.
No, listen.
Just say what you're going to say, which is that you claim that you've seen someone.
We casted NIP versus Penta as analysts at a major, right?
Yes. And you're going to claim I wasn't watching the game, right?
Me and you talked the whole game. All right, we did not watch a single moment of the game. Afterwards, we did analysts and we just made shit up. So,
you want to know something interesting here? First of all, you might be right about that one, because who gives a fuck about NIP versus Penta in the group stage? That was like one of the worst games. They played on cash. I believe it was 16-13. Penta was actually winning the game most of the time, and then NIP came back close towards the end. It's weird. I remember all the fucking game, innit? I only watched it once. I was with you. Secondly, I'm a much better than you than this, Semphis. I've done thousands of hours of watching these games. I can multitask. I can watch a game on a low level and go, not that big a game, while having a conversation.
Well, you got the map wrong because it was overpassed. But
I love it.
I love it. Now we have a title for this video. It's Semphis vs Thoorin. It's just, it's a whole. This isn't even Peeker's advantage anymore. It's fine. I'm okay refereeing this.
Yeah, we're both in the middle here. We got this.
Here's your problem, Semphis. You Googled NIP versus Penta, and that's ESL Pro League. We're talking about DreamHack Winter 2014. Get murked. Did you watch that game, Semphis? You were there, but I think you were talking to me a lot of the time.
Yeah,
Anyway, the point I'm making is this. By the way, that's actually, I'm not joking, that's a standard thing that people do. Unless it's like a big game, I'm not going to call out names because I don't want to wreck my friends. Every single analyst, you watch so many games at these events, no one sat there like watching the whole game, fucking making notes in a pad. You watch it on a lower level, and that's why, for example, if you ever see my style of analysis, you don't see me going, in the 4th round, they did a force, I disagree with that, you know, the one guy got the AK, probably should have just saved on that. If you notice, I do stylistic analysis. Oh, I thought actually like this team didn't quite play aggressively enough. They didn't respect him at this point. Or I do player analysis. The star player, he didn't actually perform to the level I thought he needed to for the win condition. I'm entirely honest about this. I think you picked the wrong guy for this. There's other people who you could definitely wreck for some of this stuff, but you have made a mistake on this particular instance.
You know, what really was funny was, do you remember?
Like you just touched on it there. You know one game. Oh, by the way, you didn't trick me that. Like, if you noticed, I sort of baited you in that. I knew that you were there with me, mate. In that one game, right, you were there talking to me. But your problem is you're doubling down now. Just if you just admitted that you meant I probably didn't watch like every game or I missed some games, you legitimately believed what you just said. You don't think I watch any of the matches at the big tournaments, right?
I never once said that. Obviously, you've watched games. Like, I don't doubt you've watched a lot of Counter-Strike. Like, you can't not have. Like,
Well,
I mean,
you do imply that.
My point is that I do think that you and other people comment on games you did not watch, and which you've already admitted to. And I'm not saying you've never watched any games, but I don't know. I just think like a lot of newer players and a lot of people that follow you will take what you say as gospel, and then you might be commenting.
For anyone, don't take anyone's word as gospel. You think for yourself. And secondly,
well, yeah, but they're 12-year-old kids. I mean, that's what they're gonna do. Is his mic breaking up for you guys too, or
a little
loud?
bit?
I think you're farther away from it. That's why. So it's not grabbing it.
It might be a Skype problem. Skype does have that problem sometimes. It was just cutting out a little bit. Yeah,
is it better now?
Cut out most of it.
It's better if it's further away. Is it better like that?
It's fine right now. It was just you were just losing words. Like it was
weird. No, basically, this is what I would say about that though. Is that I actually am very honest if I don't watch stuff generally. Like, so for example, for players, if someone wants to know my thoughts on a new lineup, yeah, I'll give my thoughts, but I don't claim to have watched all the Pro League matches that player played in. So, for example, that's actually generally why I don't tend to do videos about like NRG or something, you know, because I've watched almost no games of them except like the odd games at like Copenhagen Games or something, you know. You can see why you get triggered. Listen, by the way, it's totally legit. Like, for example, I know people used to get mad triggered that I think FNS can attest to this. When I used to describe Cutler as a lurker, people used to get mad triggered for some reason. I don't know why, because in that particular sense, like, I think there's not many players are like a fucking happy get-right style lurk who 24/7 lurk on the other side of the map. To me, he like half the time was playing like a lurker. Like, he was more passive in the way he played the game, and he didn't go in with the entry pack. You know, I could be wrong on this, but so I think that people just, because it's Thoorin and people want, listen, part of what's fun about me is just telling me I'm wrong, right? And knowing that I'm wrong and that I'm an idiot. So I get that people get hyped up for that, but I think they go too far the other way on it, you know?
Yeah.
And in your particular case, I think you actually picked a bad example in that particular tweet because, like, let's be real.
Well, you have to understand that you tweet these things right as we lose. So obviously people are mad, right? Like I'm not saying that every, like,
yeah.
Keep talking.
So, you know, like you're obviously going to trigger the players that lose instantaneously if they just lost and they're mad they lost.
Doesn't
right?
work.
So it's always going to be more emotional for that person than than a week later or something.
I said I don't blame you.
I'm just saying, like
it probably feels like bullshit. You probably, this is unfair. And also, in your particular case, you're right. You were there. You probably thought, how much did he really watch this game? He's being so critical. It's all perfectly justified, I think.
I just like proving you wrong inside the game. Like,
pretty good.
For example,
I'm gonna bring up this classic example from the major.
No, the Cluj game versus when we played Dignitas, and you specifically shit talked people. I didn't know. Obviously, like, I'm playing the game, right? So I had no idea. We just watched it later. And it was so fucking funny because you called me a field mouse, and you called
Well, you do kind of
AZ,
look like a field mouse.
and he called AZ a pitbull, right, or some shit. I don't know.
called you like a poodle, and he was a pitbull. Which, by the way,
Right.
Semphis this. It was actually a reference to a really old school trash talk video that they did with this West Coast team that was like "Death is Eternal." We're like, "Yo, man, us West Coasters with pit bulls, East Coast is poodles, man." So I was actually kind of like an homage to that.
Well, I didn't know that part. I just knew that, like you said that, right? Like that was your analysis of like us, because they accidentally in the, like, obviously me versus AZ, it didn't make any sense because it was in-game leader versus their star player, and that was their like. It was like that was their matchup.
It's like I'll pull back the curtain as like Wizard of Oz, as it were. They obviously did that to trigger me because they probably knew I didn't think you were a good player. So they were going to be like, "Well, Thoorin, what do you make of this? We've got FNS versus AZ." By the way, at that time, AZ was like fucking bonkers. It was like,
and then he drops 40, but then I dropped 30, but we won.
That's the worst part. By the way, that's an example. If someone gets me, I do put my hands up. Like, fair play. I got wrecked on that one. Like, for example, I remember I said that complexity lineup with Whitmer was shit, but then miraculously they somehow won a map against like Gambit or something, you know.
They were still shit.
They obviously were.
They were still shit.
What the fuck?
To give it this sense, like that was just the most unlucky game I could have ever picked to say that before, because you did like top flag the game right after, right?
These are like your curse predictions where like you say that someone's gonna win and the other team wins every single time. I feel like every time I've seen a tweet of you say someone's gonna win, the other team wins, and then there's just.
Start saying we're going to lose.
It's because they have the opposite charisma to most people. So normally there's a famous thing about predictions that you only remember the ones that people got right. Because when they got it right, you're like, fuck, that was amazing. How do you get that? You know, see, you do the opposite. You ignore all the other. Well, obviously everyone wants me to be wrong. So they only remember the ones I got wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so I have a question for you.
You're right.
I have a question for you because me and a couple other people were talking about this yesterday. I think top 3 players in the world, we can just say coldzera, Nico, Simple, right? Is everyone in agreement with that?
Well, I don't know. Simple gets a lot of just
coldzera, Nico, Simple. Is that what you said?
Yeah, coldzera, Nico, Simple. Just top 3 players.
Yeah.
All right. If you had to pick one of them and you only get to pick one of them, you know, you can't like pick all 3 of them for your super team. If you pick one to build the team around, which one do you pick?
Is this for me? Oh, well, here's the thing. I think it's very easy because of the 3, the last I would pick to make a team round is coldzera, because I think he's a fucking amazing player, but I also like he's a player where I think the way people analyze him is very unfair, because they analyze him as if he was an individual player only, and they look at him like, look at his stats though, and look at like this scenario he's in, but it's like I'd like to see that guy play without Fallen, for example, right? Simple and Nico have played with no fucking in-game leader at times and been godlike players. They've played in teams, like think about when Simple was in that team last year called Worst Players, where it was him and a bunch of his mates from the CIS region. He was like going ham on like fucking Na'Vi and VP on LAN with like bomb-ass players. coldzera's a very, very good player, but outside of his team system, I don't know that he'd be as good. Now, he might probably still be pretty good, but the difference is I know Nico and coldzera. You can put Simple, rather, could be in almost any team and they'll do the shit they do now.
Well, the difference between Cold for me, like Cold, and then there's Nico and Simple, who I think are very similar players in the way that how explosive that they are. Cold is a baiter, like the biggest baiter you'll ever watch in CS.
But in the positive, because he has the right players around him, you know?
Right, I get that, and it's like almost saying like Messi has the right players on Barcelona, and that's why he performs well. But like at the same time, I just feel like Cold's so good at staying alive and playing around his team that I think on any team he would still be successful as a player. Now I don't know if his team would win as much, because I think SK a lot of the times win because they have that structure around Cold. But you asked, the question was, who would you want to build your team around? And I think for me, it would definitely be Cold.
Okay, but that's the question, though. Isn't this the question, though, FNS? It's not like whether he'd be good. Listen, all these players would be good, let's be real.
No, yeah, I know.
The difference is, though, like, as I said, I've actually seen him, Simple and Nico, just hard carry players who aren't very good. I just don't know if coldzera would do that to the same degree. Like I said,
I feel like there are a lot of explosive players, but I think there's more value in finding players that bait a little more, but the way that Cold does. You know what I'm saying? Like, the way that Cold baits is really, really like a lot better than the way Get Right baits, in my opinion. Like Get Right,
it's genius.
Right, and so to me, I feel like that's a little bit more valuable than finding an explosive player like an Apex, because I think what Simple can do is like, and Simple and Nico could both opt too, right? So they're both like completely well-rounded players, but I think there's just more value in what Cold brings. That's all. Because Cold is a better Awper than both of them, in my
I
opinion.
mean, for me,
Maybe okay.
No,
maybe
no,
not
no,
simple.
no.
Maybe not simple, but I think better than Nico.
Okay,
Maybe not simple.
I'll give you
No,
Nico, but not
personally-
simple. But
Yeah. Sorry.
personally, I
sorry.
think you have to look at what teammates they have, right? Because like if you're gonna take a team and say complexity, and you're replacing PTR, you put Simple on that team. He has the
Yes.
best chance
Yep.
to just carry the shit out of them, because he has the best like total carry potential in the sense that he can use every gun.
Yep.
He's great with every pistol. He's good at just killing many
plays super
people.
aggressively, so he's
Yeah,
not going to sit back, you know.
He's going to make space. He's going to make everything easier for everyone. But you have a system around, or like a maybe more of a smarter team. You probably put Cold on it just because like he's going to thrive in a teamwork type of situation, just because he's so smart. He knows every grenade, like, and then Nico's just mechanically the best in my opinion. Like just one taps. Like Simple's better at killing many people in my opinion. Like just killing as many people as possible. I think Simple's better. I don't know if you guys agree, but like Nico mechanically, just his aim is just like crisper.
Here's a funny thing, right? This is actually a good way to contrast them. If you want to look at them only individually, like this is something that obviously will trigger the fuck out of Brazilian fans, but it's not my concern. I actually think that if you look at the three players, right, Cold Zera, to me, is like, it's almost like he's completed Counter-Strike. He's mastered, to his ability level, he has mastered the game. Everything looks fucking polished and perfect, and he's always looking in the right spot, and he knows exactly what to do, and even if he doesn't headshot them, he's going to use the right technique to kill them in the most efficient amount of bullets for his skill level, right? Simple, what shows how bonkers, outrageously talented this guy is he's one of the players, for a pro player, who has like appalling like awareness of where to take a duel and like where to have the fucking crosshair placed and all this stuff. For me, the reason why Nico is actually very polished himself is he's like between the two. He's got mad skills like Simple, but he's also like, he's always looking in the right spot. He's always like taking his time to take the angle. He doesn't just aggressively roll in the corner. So I actually think Simple, bizarrely, could actually be better than he is. It's just that he's never going to be that sort of player who plays a bit more reserved, is he? He's never going to rein it in anyway. He's just going to be Simple.
How old is he now? 19, 20?
He's still pretty young. I think he's 20. I believe he's just turned 20.
Like, you never know how he could mature in the like 20 is really young. Like,
yes.
Like in the grand scheme
Nico's
of,
a similar age as well.
Yeah.
I'm Forrest in 1.6 was kind of like Simple, just running around, like pushing.
Yes.
And now he's pretty passive. Like he's still aggressive, but he's not quite the
I feel like
Rambo.
The one thing that Simple and Nico like that Cold brings, which is why I find Cold more valuable on the team, is the fact that Cold just knows how to stay alive better. Like, I feel like Simple and Nico a lot of the times take duels they don't have to, just because they have immense skill, and then they just die, right? They get 2v1 or 3v1, or a lot of teams are able to anti them. Whereas a player like Cold plays so intelligently, it's really hard to anti-strat him, and just individually, and therefore he won't die, and he's usually alive in those last, like, he's one of the last two people alive, for example. But now that Nico has players like Guardian and, just like his old team, Olaf Meister, all those players, I feel like he gets away with it more because there are more skilled players on the team and stuff, whereas Simple probably doesn't.
Well, that's actually why that's why back in the day, a lot of people don't know this, but even at the end of 1.6, I personally thought Get Right was better than Forest. And this is one of the reasons why, is because Get Right actually, here's the thing, people don't know this. When Get Right first started his career, like everyone else in Sweden, he just tried to play off having sick aim and be a mad fragger, right? That's what they all did. Everyone was like a mini Forest, basically. But what happened was, over the years, Get Right became, I mean, it wasn't as extreme yet as he was in CSGO, of being like a mad lurker, but he already became more and more passive. And basically, he did what you're talking about here. He just started to like play the angle, play the bomb clock, play like a position, so make a guy. And what I thought made him better than Forrest as a result was people on the skill level of Forrest, Nico, Simple, they are so outrageously good. It's like a basketball player, right? You could say what objectively is a bad shot, but it's not a bad shot if it's like Kobe Bryant or Steph Curry or something. Like, they're just so good. To them, it's not a bad shot. But if you took a player like Forrest and you could somehow put his skill set with Get Right's brain, he'd be even better.
I think that's what Cold is, literally. I think that's exactly what I'm saying Cold is like, he's able to understand the game, I think, better than the other two in terms of how to win the round. Not necessarily get the most amount of kills, whereas Simple and Nico, I think a lot of the times go for highlight plays. Like, they'll get two, they'll go for two more. Just a lot of the times from what I've watched, whereas Cold, half the kills that he gets he makes kills so easy for himself. He literally kills people in the back 60% of the time.
No,
because he just plays it so intelligently.
The big difference between playing against him, I don't think I've ever played against Nico. I might have at one point, but I've played against Simple and Cold a lot, obviously. And when you're playing against Cold, it feels like it's impossible to kill him. Like it just feels like, dude, you are so fucking annoying. Just let me get it. Let me shoot you. Like do so. Like he's so fucking annoying.
Sure.
It never feels like you have a chance to kill him. And then, but like by the time you do actually get to like fight with him, like there's been like nades that have come in, and there's like, and everything changes, and then all of a sudden, and it doesn't even feel like he's killed anyone, and then you hit tab and he's like 30-10, and you're just like, oh, I guess he's
that's
just
what I mean. I think
people this whole
Device is a
time.
lot like that as well. Like a Device is also underrated now because all those players were mentioned, but Device is also very intelligent in the way that he peeks, and like he doesn't just take duels, whereas Nico and Simple are allowed to because they just have the skill to, and most of the time they'll win them, right?
That's where I was going with that, is that like with Cold it feels like it's you never get the chance to kill him. And with Simple, it feels like you're just like not scared, but you're always like, fuck, where is he? Like he's doing something. He's gonna do something, and I'm gonna have to hit my shot or I'm dead. You know, that's the difference between the two.
And that's why I
styles of
find
play.
Cold more valuable, because I think you win more rounds with Cold. That's as simply as I could put it. Like I think you just win. There's just more percentage.
I think you're a better team. I think Cold is a good choice. I just mean if you're a shit team, like Simple is gonna be a better option. I don't think
But you
Cold
won't
can
win
carry
though,
you.
Corey. Like that's the thing. I feel like there's no consistency in that. As my point. Like I don't think you'll ever win with like 3 or 4 shit players and then having a Nico.
Well, it depends how shit and and what you define as shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
if you're putting Simple and 4 main
some
players.
good players on his team to like make his playstyle work, because Device and Cold are both the same in the sense that like the shit doesn't go their way, they save. Like shit doesn't go their way, they save.
Well, okay, like generally,
which is smart. It's a smart way to do it, right?
Yeah.
But
this might sound bizarre when we're talking about the context of Nico and Simple, who obviously famously have been on bad teams where they were amazing, but the team never won, you know. But actually, bizarrely, I've seen way more games from coldzera and both Device and coldzera actually, who have this more passive style, where our stats look like fucking hell. What, they got 39 kills and lost, but then you watch the game and you're like, well, yeah, actually, listen, they were very good, but they also didn't like take any mad risk that could have maybe broken the game open. You know, that's where like the style difference comes in as well. Like I would like when you were saying that, like Davey, that it feels like impossible to kill coldzera. In a way, I think that's also why he gets the plaudits of being like the final boss in that sense, because he doesn't just beat you on the scoreboard and in the game. He has the aura around him that you can't beat him. And it reminds me actually, if any of you watch MMA, this is why I always thought like George St. Pierre was amazing, because all he did all day long is he just had a really, really good rounded skill set. So whatever your skill is, he just shuts you down all day. He just frustrates you, neutralizes you. And at the end of the fight, you just feel like half of George St. Pierre's opponents that he beat, because he would always beat them by decision, would be like, oh, I should have a fucking rematch. Like, I know what I need to do now to beat him. And it didn't matter. Whereas if you look at some of the like really great MMA fighters who were like super aggro, like knockout artists, they're amazing when they win because they just knock you the fuck out. But they also can be beaten because to knock people out, you have to create openings from which you can be knocked out sometimes, right? Sometimes it happens as a fluke.
Yeah, no, I remember the one I remember the most, like going like literally to what you're talking about there is like the GSP versus Koscheck fight. When he beat him, just doing jabs the whole fight, just jab, the whole fight until Koscheck's face was so swollen.
He broke his orbital bone.
Yeah. Yeah, just jabs the whole time. And I remember, and no one's like, GSP was not a stand-up like boxer fighter. He never has been, but he beat Koscheck just with jabs. I remember thinking like, wow, that's incredible.
Well,
because the whole thing was Koscheck's entire style was actually he always would wing this massive overhand right. So he was trying to knock you out all the time. Yep. If you never ever go into that sort of fight, you never let him get close. You're keeping it distance.
Yep.
He literally just did that for 5 rounds. It was mental.
No, it was ridiculous. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, that was.
I just think if you look at a map like Train, right, and you look at how SK sets up. They have Fur and Ladder. Fallen's kind of back 6, Bomb Train roaming around with an op. He's kind of between everything, Fallen's Fallen. And then, they got Taco playing inner. He's pretty much just playing retake. He's not really trying to hold the site. Every once in a while, Fur will go back and they'll play like double close. But most of the time, Fur tries to get in Ladder. And then right now, Bolt is kind of, just playing that kind of passive, like kind of Bomb Train supporting Fur when he's like close up, whatever. Anyways, the point is, you got to get through many people to get to Cold. Like, Cole's not fighting Ivy. Like, he's not, like, you got to kill Fur in Ladder, which apparently people can't do. And then you got, well, everyone's seen the clips. Like, people. Yeah. And then Fallen's always hitting crazy shots with an op. Like, the Fallen doesn't get a lot of 4Ks, but, like, I'm telling you, from playing him, he's annoying. Like, anyone that's played him, like, you might not feel him as being like a Kenny S where he's just always getting the time, but he'll kill you in ways that like other Awpers don't kill you because he's so aggressive, and like he'll peek into you and stuff more, and he plays more weird close spots. And so like
if he's not close, if he's not killing you, then he's just going up and down a ladder and just
Yeah.
being there.
He's just annoying, like flying up and down and stuff. So you got to get through these two dudes, and then Bolts is playing like a pussy in the back of Bomb Train, hiding, and then Cold's behind him, and you know, and it's just like to actually get to Cold, you got to go through like fucking 4 walls first, and those players are all great. They're all like everyone would want every player on their team.
Yeah, that's kind of my point
like,
when I said about depends what team he's on, you know.
Yeah,
I just think the playstyle that you guys are just mentioning, the GSP, like the style where you're playing it safe, breeds consistency in individual consistency overall.
Oh, by the
right?
way,
That's
you
what
do know
Aaron
those
says.
2 players famously are the 2 that like never have the rating below average.
Right, exactly.
They're
That's
the
what I'm
only
saying.
2 that like every tournament for like 3 years or something, you know, they're like 1.1 rating or something, you know.
Right, and because of that, those are the 2 players that you'd mention, right? But how many more can you mention? Whereas like players like Simple and Nico, there are a lot of players like that
Oh,
that
it's
are
tons
so
of that. They're just the
explosive.
ultra explosive version,
Exactly.
right? They're like the guy on steroids who's the home run hitter.
Which is why I'm saying, like, because Cold and Device are able to use this playstyle, this baiting playstyle, but also be so impactful, which is why I'd value them way more on a team,
Okay.
regardless of what it was, because I just think there's less of those types of players that can be so successful. And like,
I've got one
Cold
angle
is never
that-
not
sorry.
confident, I feel.
I've also got one angle, right, that I don't think I try to stress it all the time, but people forget it because again, when we're comparing these players, like again, unless we bring it up, we're already eliminating their teammates and we're just thinking about them and what they did in a match we saw. Here's a factor that goes in favor of Nico that I don't think anyone else will ever have this disadvantage. He comes from fucking Bosnia. Right? What players even from his region could he play with? Right? He'd have to get Yanko out of retirement. He'd have to get some other fucking Cassard would have to come back from being a coach. Like the guy, like Cold Zero plays with people from Brazil. Is anyone aware of that? Like they're all from his culture. He understands them all personally. He's known many of them for many, many years. They're also, as Semphis mentioned, some of the best players in the world at their roles and their positions. They're super experienced. But like at all times, Nico, any team he plays on, he's going to be like a super sub, basically. Like hopefully eventually he can develop some chemistry and all this sort of thing. But the idea this guy's even in the conversation shows what a fucking magical player he is, right?
I mean, truly, it shocked me when they lost to SK the last tournament. I don't remember what it was, but the last tournament that I watched,
ESL
where
Pro League
Guardian knifed
season, yeah.
the guy with
Yeah.
that I couldn't believe they lost that because I felt like that was it right there. That's where
Yes.
Faze takes over.
Yeah.
But still, SK is able to beat them. And I think it's more of like just at this point, Kerrigan's just never going to be fit SK or something. I don't know what it is, but
Dude, SK are grinders, man. Brazilian are
Oh,
grinders.
yeah.
They don't give up. Like, dude, I've been up in, like, I know it's just online. It's not like a LAN or anything, but I've been up with multiple lineups on them being like 14-8, like, you know, 14-10, and like versus most teams you close that out or at least get to OT, they'll just win versus you. Like they'll just somehow like they win 2 rounds in a row, you're broke, and then they got you. Like as soon as they get you on that like money, like your money is not good enough to buy twice in a row, you're like almost done versus them a lot of the time just because they're so smart. Like
I like playing SK and BO1s because they don't wake up like right away. They just like they're always slow starters. I love playing them in BO1s. Usually I win map 1 versus them, any of my teams, but map 2 and 3, if you play them in the BO3, chances are like they're just so much better in map 2 and 3 that it's just insane to me. Like how big the difference is. It's like they'll just 16-4 you on map 2. It doesn't matter what.
I think good teams like I think when you're a better team than a lower team, the first map you might get thrown off. Like they played more aggressive than you thought. Maybe they played more passive. Maybe the anti-stratting you didn't work. And then going into map 2, you can kind of just be like, all right, they're gonna play aggressive. Be fucking ready. You know, like
I don't
be
know,
ready.
Corey. We played against them last season, and the first map we lost 16-0. And then the second map we were down, what, 12-4? And then came back and won? So that's the anomaly right there.
There's not many teams like us.
No. Definitely not.
If there was one player you guys had to think about, like one, you had to pick this one player that's going to be in the top 20 next year that isn't even in the top 20 right now, that no one has even like heard of, or he's just not in the top 20. Who would it be? For all of you?
Zywoo.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I don't think he'll be on a top team, unfortunately, so he probably has no chance. The problem is, right, I know you probably haven't like thought about this a lot, FNS, but the problem is there's actually like an obvious candidate who just wasn't, which is Electronic from Na'Vi, because he's now on a good team finally. So that one feels
Fair
like
enough.
cheating. So I think we should pick someone different than that personally. So let me think. Top 20.
I have one. For me, it's Amanek. I think if he's able to get on like an Envious or a G2, I know you guys probably haven't seen much of him, but this dude is insane. Like, in my opinion, he's the only reason Misfits is at all relevant. And I'm not saying like Sean isn't doing his job or anything like that. I just feel like Amanek saves them so much. And I feel like if he was on a team that was like where there was no language barrier, because from what I've heard, he doesn't speak English that well.
Okay.
But he plays CS. Like, if you watch a couple of his games, like the way he plays CS is like, it literally reminds me of like a cold, but just like a worse cold. So like, I would say Amanek for me personally.
I think if I was going to pick one, based on how the major system works now, like the fact that that's changing and everything going along with that, I think maybe I'm biased but I think NAF wouldn't be a bad pick because Renegades is going to get the chance to play at a lot of big events this year. They won that Star Series event towards the end of last year, right? NAF has been hard carrying that team. Like, he has been going
If he even
off.
stays on Renegades, you know, he could get
Yeah,
offers.
you know what?
Like,
Yeah, fair
C9.
enough. Yeah, and either way, I think he's a sleeper because he's always kind of been a sleeper. Like, everyone knows how insane he is, but he's, you know. So I think that wouldn't be a bad pick, considering the fact that Renegades is going to get to a lot of big events this year. And if he keeps playing as well as he's playing, then I think he'd be a good one.
You also have to realize, though, FNS, like, there's only 20 players can get on that list. Like, the reason why people don't, like, the reason why I often tweet about that sort of a list is because I don't really like the criteria of how they do it. Because, for example, if you ever go and look at any of the past years, if there's ever a dominant team, they get like 4 players on the list. No joke.
Fair enough. That's true.
Like, come on, the idea that the 4th best player is better than, like, you know.
So how do you
like,
think? How would you do it then? There was a list.
I generally, well, I did my top 10 this year. So, for example, people like Fallen wasn't on my top 10.
Fair enough. So maybe just pick 1, maybe 2 players from.
Generally, yeah, I'm going to pick the superstar player. So, for example, I'll give you an example of exactly why I brought this up, though, is because if I mention some of the players who won't be making this year's top 20, most likely, you'll be like, well, obviously they could make it next year. So, for example, Twists, I bet he won't be on the top 20. Well, obviously that guy's got a mad talent. We already know it. He's just not in a position where he doesn't play for a good enough team. But I would already say personally, I think he should be a contender for that. You know, are you telling me? Like, someone like fucking Kirby was better than Twists this year? I don't know about that, mate.
In terms of impact for his team, I guess I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Know what I mean? Like, Kirby's a decent player, but like, I don't think he's even close to the best player on his team. And half the year he was just good, but like, he's just, you know, just because he gets to the semi-finals doesn't mean he did it. Yeah. Like, basically. Sorry, yeah.
Just depending on Nip does, Rez could be up there.
That's a good one, yeah. Because I think he would have to be essential for them to be good.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if they slump, then he'll never make it. But if they perform and have a couple tournament wins or something, I think he's been like right up there with Forrest, like more consistent even. I think, like, I don't know, he's just pretty good.
Like, I've basically just never understood the angle, right? That like, so for example, if you're talking about anyone who isn't like considered the superstar player in like SK or Faze or whatever, I've never understood taking the player who's the 3rd or 4th best player and being like, well, look, he won this tournament and placed there. It's like, mate, just because someone won like the NBA championship on the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan, they're not like, you know what, Carmelo Anthony, fuck you. I was better than you. I've got 3 championships. It's like, you're on the bench, bro. What the fuck are you talking about? You sat and watched the guy who really won those. You know, you have to divide up the credit somehow. Like, yes, Cold Zero gets all that credit. Yeah, he's going to get a lot of that credit. Like, come on, as we go down the list, everyone can't get it. Like, I don't hear anyone going, Taco should be top 20. Obviously not. We can all acknowledge that. So why can't we come to a happy medium, you know?
I think one thing people don't realize is they look at stats and, like, you know, maybe Fallen has really good stats or something, but people don't realize that when you win most of your games, everyone's stats get inflated quite a bit. And I've been on teams, you know, just in NA, you know, when we would dominate every team, you know, and like your top 4 players are like literally better than everyone else's. Like, and like you said, that doesn't mean your 3rd and 4th players are better, but when you win 90% of your games, you know, you're always +5, +8, you know, like you're always got good stats. Like, you can't not. So
who do you guys think is like the best Awper in the world then? Like, wouldn't you say Fallen or no?
No, not. I wouldn't even put him in the conversation.
Really? So who would be like a top 3? Guardian.
I'd go Kenny S first, personally.
I'd go Kenny S first. I'd go Device second, and then Simple or Guardian for 3rd.
Yeah, it's pretty legit, I think. Here's the thing about Fallen. I actually think in some ways, right, here's the problem is there's 2 Fallens for me. Like last year when they had the team with FNX, I thought he was way more of a star player in that team. Like, he did just like have like equally carry games. The difference is he was more aggressive than Cold Zero. So he had some games there that were fucking amazing last year. But Fallen this year for me is like, more of a role player in that team, especially when they had Phelps. He was clearly like having to give up room to give that guy space in the team. You know, he wasn't some superstar player. The problem is, though, he is the ultimate player to always be overrated because everything he does that's really good is like a highlight clip. Like it's win an amazing 1v3 that's like impossible. So, for example, if you ever go and look when they won that DreamHack Summer this year, at that tournament, he was actually doing terribly. He had really bad stats, man. I think it was like 0.6 KPR. And like, you look at a lot of the games, he was struggling. But in the final, he was like winning like mad 1v3s and like doing fucking crazy clutches. So if you see that, your brain's going to go, fuck, he was so good in that game. But you look at the actual rest of the games, you're like, you know, the difference is if you put Kenny S in a tournament, almost every game he's going to go ham with the AWP, isn't he? He's going to hit like the same shots 80% of the time, you know. I think Fallen's more of a streaky AWPer for me personally. That's why I think he's a genius in the way he used it. I think if he tried to play like Kenny S style AWPing, he'd be way less effective. Whereas instead that like weird, like super close range combat AWP, like go where an AWPer shouldn't ever push and then kill one person and then back up, like he's a genius.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think that's like if you're talking about who has more value to a team, Fallen or Kenny S, then there's like a real debate there on like who.
I mean, one of them's an in-game leader though. So it's
exactly right. That's what I mean. It's like that. He adds way more value, like just as a player.
Sure.
He adds way more value to a team potentially, depending on what that team needs, of course. But like if you already had a great in-game leader and you just needed an Awper, you'd pick Kenny S, obviously, right? So if you're talking purely Awper, then yeah, it's different. But
plus that's add in as well. Like naturally, if you are a clutch player, you already get extra value from that because that allows you to win games. But you wouldn't make a team that was just, oh, these are all the 5 best clutches. No, it depends. Again, it's what team am I making? Like if I've already got Cold Zero in the team and I've got another player, and obviously in this scenario, it has to be a team that's not going to speak Portuguese. Maybe I do take Kenny S as my AWPer, you know. It depends what the balance of the team is. I've always thought you should have different strengths elsewhere because then like the strength of one guy covers the weakness of another player. I think actually the flaw they have in Faze right now is they have too many star players. I think it actually weakens the team slightly. I think if they took like, okay, here's like a weird statement, right? If you took like Olaf Meister out of a team like Faze and you put someone who's probably not as good a player like Valde from North or something, I think they'd actually win more tournaments. Because that guy's like a way more solid player. He's going to play within a team structure more. He's just going to hold his angles, going to play smart. I think actually they've already got enough superstars who can take over the game. You don't need to have even more.
I know, like from talking to Valde, like he likes being a playmaker. Like he wants to be that type of player. So, like I don't know anymore. This was maybe a year ago at this time. Like he wasn't on heroic yet at this point, but. Or on North at this point, I mean.
Oh, he was just on her.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry. Yeah, he likes taking the aim fights. He likes being like sort of that like aggressive like lurker, like that make a play, get a kill on the other side of the map kind of thing.
Well, okay, then let's go with the obvious example. Just put Zipnix instead of Olaf Meister there. There we go.
Fair enough.
There's some championships right there because then you're in some
Bolts instead of Olaf Meister. Bolts is
another gun as well.
Ridiculously good. When Bolts towards the end of Immortals, I think everyone like FNS and Corey, both of them here, can attest to this. He was insane. He was so fucking good.
He's just like the perfect replacement for FNX.
Oh, he was so good. He was so good. He was so like I remember one time in a scrim he had like 56 kills against us. I think. Like you know, you're just like, dude, like fuck you, man. Like it
actually,
was ridiculous.
Speaking of, I just brought up FNX, so I thought of the 100 Thieves lineup. Like a lot of people have been telling me to scrim them, and like they're insane.
I have a bet with Chet. I'm a pet that they're not going to get out of groups at this major.
I don't think they're going to do well either, personally.
I don't think they're going to do well. He has scrimmed against them, and he said, so he's making his bet off of, you know, actually scrimming against them. So admittedly, this might not have been a great bet. I think so too. I don't think they're going to get out of. I don't think they're going to get out of the groups.
Really?
I don't think
it's
so.
It's because like the problem is if you look at their team,
not because they're bad, but I just don't think so.
No. Like they actually are like the old Immortals lineup, but even more aggro because the old Immortals lineup had Steel and Bolt, who in general were playing like they were like the team core and the rest were just allowed to do whatever the fuck they want and go super ham. So the problem with that team is I never thought that Immortals lineup was that great. Like I think them getting second at the major is probably like one of the weakest second places we've ever had at a major. They were just a super streaky team. And when you have players that all just try to go balls to the wall, you can have games where it goes well and it all works out and it's fucking awesome. But like I've always said this, I always thought Henny was like the most overrated fucking Brazilian player ever because like what's the value of being an Awper who can hit the fastest shot ever but can't hit a normal AWP shot on a guy that comes around the corner into your crosshair? You know, like I don't see much value in that personally. You know, you'll have the game where you hit the 10 super flick shots and you go, wow, what a god. But I want my Awper to just hit the 7 out of 10 degree.
You just described Skadoodle. Like Skadoodle is the opposite of Henny. I think Skadoodle like is very stagnant. I guess that could also be a problem too. Like you could hit the easy shot.
I think he goes the other extreme though, right? Most
Yeah.
people are probably a little bit closer to the middle height.
Fair enough, yeah.
I can tell
That's
you
what
that.
you want the Guardian. You want the guy that like he pretty much plays passive, but he can like go and kill people if you need him to. I think he's the most well-rounded besides like Kenny, but Kenny just hits every shot. So what can you do?
Yeah, Henny, the way playing against Henny felt, Thorn, is that just like almost exactly what you just described, except for like he would do it in the most, like he would do it when like you think you got him. Like you flashed him
okay.
off, he's stuck in
Yeah.
a corner, you got him, you're mollying him, and then he just peeks out in the molly and gets a double quick scope and then dies to the molly. Like he did that to me once, where like he was like opping B on cash, and we flashed him and he ran into we call it snacks corner, like the corner on, I don't know, like you know, if you were opping the angle on cash, and then instead of running back towards the site, you ran to the corner on that left
Yes.
side. Yeah, he was there, and we threw a molly at him, and while getting burned, he peeked out like shoulder peek, like pre-fire, 2 kills, and then died to the molly. And it's just like, dude, like fuck you, man. Like no one else would do that. Like, and
True.
so he was really like. He's so fast. He's the fastest player I've ever played against. Not the best, but the fastest for sure.
You know, the
So,
funny
like-
thing about this discussion, though, is that this just shows how people's perceptions change over the years. And it also definitely depends if you're a fan and from what country. Because, you know, now everyone will acknowledge Device is a really good player, right? Some people still hate on him just because they know he's like one of my favorite players. But I can take that out of the equation and look at the normal comments, right? But you know that, I mean, maybe Semphis can attest to this. Back in the day, if you were like Get Right was at the end of 1.6, dude, people would talk mad shit on you. Like, he's a fucking pussy. Like, Forrest Swayber, he's so aggressive. You know, like, people just only wanted to see the super aggro guy, you know. So the idea that Cold Zero is like universally hailed as the best player, which I agree with, just actually shows that we've actually had some development, some evolution in how people think of the players, I think. Because people used to think it was like a weakness of character to not want to take aggressive duels or something weird,
Well,
you know.
well, what's funny is like Cold has a lot of highlights. Is I think that's why. Like he does have a lot of highlight clips that you could look back and be like, holy shit, this kid is in an impossible situation and he just won it.
He just doesn't miss. Like Cold
right,
doesn't make a
so-
mistake and he doesn't miss. He doesn't like peek out and do a stupid peek. Like he never puts himself in a position to miss. He's always in the best position to hit his shot. It's ridiculous. He's so
Yeah.
good.
I think he kind of does what Get Right did at the start of CS:GO, where he's not in the same lurking role, but he goes in kind of third, fourth, and he always has 100 health for like after plants, you know, because he doesn't take a lot of damage like entering the site, which is what Get Right used
Doesn't
to
waste
do, which is
nades.
the clutch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he'll have like, you know, smoke, a flash, a molly, and then he's in a 1v3 with 100 health, and that's when, if his teammates are good like they are for blah blah blah, they've done some damage to the team before they died. You know, like most
He's
good
just-
players, you know,
yeah.
before you die, usually you do some damage before you die. So then now Cold's in a 1v3, 2 dudes have 40 health, maybe one is 100, and like that becomes way more winnable for
What's
Cold.
funny is he most of the time just saves anyway. He's like, I'm
Yeah.
done. I'm not going for this shit. I'm just gonna save the next round.
Yeah, it just leaves.
I'm telling you guys though, fucking Amanek, man. I'm telling you guys, that guy is so fucking good.
Okay, noted. Let me write
We'll
that down.
see. Write it down.
Yeah, writing it
so,
down.
You know, 3 months down the road,
Well,
you'll see.
And one thing,
If he joins Envious or G2.
right. So I think this every time I watch SK, and I've said it to Corey a bunch of times in our TeamSpeak. I'm like, does SK, like, because people always like praise for being this like super aggressive, like just X factor player, and I agree he's insane. I agree with all that. He's an awesome player, but then like you got to think like those times where he pushes mid on overpass 2 rounds in a row and dies, and you think like, does Cold ever just sit there and look at Fur and be like, dude, stop fucking pushing? Like, do you think they ever
No.
tell Fur stop
like, no.
pushing? Like, I feel like they just can't. Like, but if anyone could, it would be Cold though, right?
Well, I feel like you have to be like I think playstyles are also a thing, right? So if you're like gonna take someone
Yeah.
out of their comfort zone just because it's annoying you or because he's having a bad game, that's gonna fuck that player up for the next month or two because you're literally changing the way the dude's playing because he's having one bad game. So I don't think they do that type of shit. Like I feel like if it's a bad game that the guy's having, he'll realize himself that he's just, you know, he's got to stop. So at a high level like that, you know, like most players I think just realize that they push twice at bad timings, they're just not getting lucky enough, or the timing is just bad. They're not going to do it anymore and let their teammates take over and be more
What's
supportive.
interesting about it is that if I feel like if anyone else besides Fur did that, people would say it was a stupid play.
Yeah.
If it was anyone
like
else
they've earned that,
besides
though.
Fur, I agree. No, I agree. Like I agree. I think that because it's worked for him so often that you can't, like, it works for him. It works for their team. Like, so you let him do it. Obviously.
I was gonna say I think it's just more timing, dude. Like I think his timings are better than other people's.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it's like
No,
his
he's
aim is
definitely
fucking
way
insane.
better at it.
Right. I think it's just his timings and his instinct.
Well,
That's better.
He said that he tells Fulham not to tell him what anyone is doing. Like he said that in interviews. So he doesn't want to like know that they're gonna wait outside of A-holes on
He
call.
doesn't want to change up his playstyle.
Yeah, he doesn't want to like get in his own head and be like, I shouldn't push this because they're gonna be waiting.
Yeah, he doesn't want to second guess himself.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I will say that's something that a lot of like NA players do, and a lot of players in general. Like I've done it where you watch a demo and you think like, all right, this is terrible. Just the way they play, it's not going to work. Then you lose and you look back and you're like, oh, like that strat would have actually owned them. Like they weren't doing what they would normally do, and like that definitely can be like an issue, right? Of like, how far should you go to any strat?
Because NA teams are afraid to adapt. They'd rather just be prepared and then have everything work in their favor. But the second things go south, the adaptation just isn't there, and then they just keep losing rounds, you know, or like they'll win one, lose the next. So
plus, if you're cold zero, you can't really complain to Fur. You are like the biggest beneficiary of Fur doing that all the other times.
True,
like for example, even if he dies in that scenario, right? Cool. Now I know they're top mid. You damaged 1 to 40 health. Like I'm gonna get him later in the round. Like maybe now I can play B on the back. You know, like come on, man. That guy.
He does open
their
up
play
avenues.
styles linked together so well. It's unreal, isn't it?
like if you guys watch Cobble T side, Cold is literally 5 steps. He was dropped with Fur, but 5 steps behind. Fur literally gets baited without a trade. Like Cold doesn't even attempt to trade. He just baits him fully, watches his window, regardless of what Fur does, and then Cold comes in at 25 seconds left in the round to like try to come out drop. And it's the same thing.
I don't know what their setup is like, but if I was Cold Zero, I'd even have him fucking sitting next to me at the LAN, so I could be watching the screen like, right, what is that? Like fucking moving back. You know the classic like screen watch you can do on certain spots.
Yeah.
I feel like more teams need to adapt the way that SK plays in terms of baiting. I think players just are too afraid to bait a lot of the times, and they're just like right behind the enemy, get doubled, or you know what I mean? Like a lot of players just throw away their lives. You just want to
bait more.
I feel. Yeah. Well,
you just want to bait more. You just don't.
I mean, I would
just want better stats.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying I would want players like that on my team because, like I said, I feel like they're too valuable. Players that could do it right are like really, really valuable. And Cold is one of those players. So
it's the same reason why. I mean, obviously, these are the 2-star players we talked about, Device and Cold Zero. Well, it's no coincidence the 2 most stable teams over the year, Astralis and SK. They're the ones who are always in the semi-final. That's part of why, because if you do this style, it's kind of like we said about Cold Zero individually. The whole point is, Simple and Nico play so extreme that when they hit the crazy headshots they can do, they just win outright. It looks amazing. The difference is Cold Zero can just get an ordinary kill and win the 1v2. You know, he doesn't need to take this. So their teams are the same. They can just win a grind out game. The difference is Faze probably has to like completely ruffle stomp you.
That's why I want to watch like Astralis or SK demos, because I think the teamwork is at the end of the day a lot easier to understand, and you could see why every player does what they do. Whereas if Deco running out and getting 3-1 digs, winning an eco round, and then all of a sudden the other Faze has economy. That's not like you can't be like, yo,
it's nothing. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
you can't
analyze
Deagle, then you go get 3-1 digs.
Yeah.
But...
Well, that's why we always used to when we did our podcast at the beginning of CS:GO. Me and Lurpis famously used to just fuck with Khan all the time by just like obviously we just took it too far for like a joke. We used to just pretend like he had no tactical aptitude, and we'd be like, listen, Patrick, I know you thought you had that sick tactic. We used to tell Forrest to go into B on banana and just kill the 2 people in the head with an AK, but that's naturally a tactic, mate. It doesn't work with anyone else. Like obviously we were doing it for effect, but there's some truth to it. Some of these players like. There's nothing to analyze there, is it? It's just like, what? Sick, yes. I like seeing that. That's it, right? You can't take anything from it.
So you watch Simple, and he just goes outside on train, goes up on a train, and just slaughters every single player outside. And it's just like, well, and I've seen him do it. Like, you're just like, well, that's not really a strat, but good job. Like, props to you. Like,
two teams that fell off for me. I don't know, Davey, you might agree, or you guys might agree with this, but like 2 teams that fell off for me at the middle of the year, but like kind of came back. Fnatic and C9 were the 2 that I was thinking of. Like they kind of fell off based on how they were previously, and then they kind of came back towards the end of the year and like started doing well. Like less so C9, but still I feel like C9 got better with Rush and Tarik joining. Who do you guys think is going to be better next year? At least the first half of next year. It's hard to say the whole year. But...
I think when they made those roster changes, Corey, I think you were the one who said you didn't think they'd get better with making those roster changes. And I don't think they have got better.
No?
I don't think so. They don't. They're still good. Like the thing is, they were always good. they're still good. It's not that they're bad now. It's that I don't think they've got, like, I thought they were going to get significantly better by making these changes. I really did, and they haven't. It doesn't seem like they have. So,
What about Fnatic then? So you would say like Fnatic's probably a lot better right now?
yeah, I would say so.
Because like they added Golden, right? And then I don't know. I think who was the other guy?
Lecro.
If Fnatic and Cloud9 were playing against each other, I think Fnatic would be the favorite.
Oh,
Yeah, like I don't know. Cloud9 just seemed weird to me. Like their roster change didn't make any sense. Like it's like you switched Stewie to a fragger, and then you got Tarik to become an in-game leader. Why? Like I didn't understand it. Like not even saying Tarik's a bad in-game leader or anything. I just like it just didn't make any sense to me. Like like get a
I think he wanted
Stanislaw
to.
or something.
I think
like,
literally that's why, because Tarik wanted to in-game lead. So
that's fine. I just think like you could have got a different player then or something. Like Rush makes a little bit of sense to me, but at the end of the day, it's like I don't know.
What would you change on
Shroud,
Cloud9 then? Like
Shroud,
right now?
Shroud and Rush, in my opinion, aren't that much different of like skill. Like I think people like talk mad shit about Shroud because he's like a streamer and like they expected him to be like Cold Zero level, like just the hype that he got, you know, like he was like NA's like saving grace, young talent. I don't think he's as bad as people thought he was. Like he was solid. Like if you watch Shroud play, he wasn't always getting like 4 kills around, but
he played these unrealistic expectations.
Yeah,
had for him.
He played smart on CT. He didn't die for no reason. He had good nade usage. Like he was a good player. Like he just, I don't know, he just didn't have the motivation, you know, to really like, take to the next level because his stream is so good. And honestly, I don't even really blame him.
Well, I mean, listen, you know him personally, so maybe you can tell me about this. But I actually also thought one of the flaws that Shroud had as a player, like I agree, I actually think his skills are pretty decent. But one of the reasons why I don't think he ever had like lots of good performances internationally is he was definitely the guy where when it got to the big LAN, he often would play much worse. So I always felt like it was just a mentality thing with him. Like I don't know why, some people just can't handle the pressure, you know, it's the massive game, you know, for whatever reason. And also, some people, it doesn't matter if me or you look at them and like, well, look at the skill. They don't feel that way inside themselves. You know, they think, oh, I'm just an ordinary player, you know, so
yeah,
you can't really help guys like that, can you?
No, I think like from playing with him, I don't think he really ever got like nervous, you know, like I don't think he was like that guy that's like, oh shit, I'm playing Faze, like that this is scary or whatever. Like I think he just doesn't have like a killer instinct that some other players have where they like try harder because it's a final, you know what I mean? Like okay, this is the final, like I'm gonna win this, like I'm gonna give everything I have. I just think he always played the same. Like so whether it was a group stage or a final, it was just the same for him, which is fine. You're always going to have like a kind of a steady performance that way because you will, at the end of the day, you won't really get affected by nerves, but you're not really going to have that like simple level, like I'm going to kill everyone. I don't care how bad my team's doing or like how good the other team's doing. Like I'm going to be better. Like some people have that, right? Like you can see it in sports too, right? Like, and I think it's an ego thing. Like it's I don't know if anyone's ever watched any strongmen or like powerlifting, a lot of those guys say you have to have an ego. Like you have to be like a narcissist and you have to believe you're better than everyone, whether you're not, like, because at the end of the day, it's even been proven in a lot of sports is that like people with egos, they'll do this thing that fans hate. They'll make excuses every time they lose. Yes. Like they'll make excuses and fans will go, oh, fuck you, you got outplayed, blah, blah, blah. But the psychological effect it has is that you believe you got unlucky. You believe you were better, and the next time you play, you'll play the guy or verse him or whatever. In your mind, you're like, he got lucky last time. I'm better. So you have that confidence. You don't going in like, oh, shit, I lost last time. He's better. What should I do to win? Like, you still believe you're better the whole time. And, like, that's like a huge thing.
I've got a funny sort of abstract example of exactly that confirms what you're saying. I remember I once read an article that someone had done a study of top athletes who were like, you know, the best in their field, like MMA champion, athletic skier, gold medalist or whatever. And the majority of these champions, like, you know, like a solid 60 or 70% actually were like pretty religious, like they believed in Jesus or something. And so this actually was sort of like an old world hack for exactly what you're talking about. The reason why they had confidence they were going to win every time is they were like, oh, you know, like, oh, God's behind me. How can I lose? You know? So what's mad is it's like a way of like artificially creating that in someone who isn't just a mad narcissist in a weird way, right?
Yeah, you kind of have that, like, it doesn't matter how well I'm going to perform, he's going to help, right?
Yeah,
like,
all things are possible through him, right? That's what they always say after they fucking win.
Yeah, and if you look at like I don't know, like you guys watch like fighting, I watch like strongmen and shit, and like those dudes, you know, you're picking up like 1,100 pounds off the ground. Like you got to be a little bit crazy, you know, like you got to be a little bit fucked up to like want to even try that. So I definitely think like you know CS, you're not in that same sort of physical sense where you have to like hype your body up, but you do need the mental aspect of just like well, a little bit off topic, but like a lot of players don't really value sleep and stuff. Like you got to get good sleep, you got to like eat right, you got to do those things. And when you're younger, you know, McDonald's and stuff's not going to affect you. But I think as you get older, like the sleep and stuff is going to catch up, and that's when like the people that take it more serious and kind of like hone those things in are going to perform better like consistently over the year. And like having confidence the whole time is obviously going to help. Like I don't know. I think most of the players like I don't know if you know like you know Maniac, Florin, like some of those guys that were like lower and they got like a lot of shit. They end up quitting because they just couldn't handle it. You know, like they just and I don't even think they were that bad. Like they weren't great. You know, they weren't like the superstars, but
They were on such good teams that like
yeah.
Well, Maniac's doing pretty well for LDLC right now, I think. Like, I know their team isn't great or anything, but they finished well above the relegation zone as far as I know. And I think he's been playing really well for them.
Yeah, he was.
Take the pressure off someone.
I do agree, though.
Yeah,
You have to be
exactly.
mentally strong, especially your best players. Like, they have to be mentally strong, for sure.
The problem is, though, in that particular example, like, unless you really, like I actually personally, okay, here's my theory on that. I actually don't think you can teach someone that. Like, that sort of mad internal confidence, some people just have, and it's very, very few people. And that's why, actually, if you ever do get someone like a Simple, right, yeah, unfortunately, when that manifests when the guy's 16, it's going to be really negative. He's going to be a complete asshole. Like, he's never going to listen to what you're telling him if he thinks you're not better than him. But the one thing you don't want to do is, yeah, you want to teach him, like, there's value in teammates. You've got to kind of sometimes help your sacrifice here. But you never want to try and, like, beat out of him that, like, killer instinct, because you're going to need that when he's the superstar player. Because I know, for example, that even people who are fucking amazing, I'll give you some examples I know personally. So, okay, Forrest, one of the most skilled players to ever play any video game. That guy doesn't have killer instinct. Like, I've seen this guy when he's lost massive championships, and he was just like, well, what are you going to do? Shit happens. And he just walked off, and he was actually cool with it, dude. Like obviously inside, I'm sure he wanted to win. The difference is, I once saw a match when Fnatic was at its prime, when they were winning every tournament. It was at Face It Stage 1. I think this is the one I'm thinking of. I think it was Face It Stage 1, if I remember rightly, where they lost to like TSM when that Danish team was like, the Astralis team was beating them all the time.
Was that the event in Italy?
No, that was the year before. This is the one that was in UK actually. And when they lost this game, by the way, Fnatic was winning every other tournament, and you know they all won tournaments after this. When they just lost this one game, Olofmeister like punched his fucking desk, and it broke part of the desk. And then after the game, I was talking to him, right? And I won't go into all the details because like I'm not straight snitching, but basically, I was just trying to sort of like do what you do, which is like placate him. Like, listen, man, they played a great tournament. You got to give it to him. You know, maybe next time you'll adapt and you'll get him. And he was just sort of like, it's bullshit. They should never have won. They should never be able to beat us. We will beat them next time we play them. And I was like, yeah, but you know, they have adapted to what you've done, and you could see some of the things Carrigan was doing. He's going, it's nonsense. You know, we're just so much better. And the mad thing is, like, even though he's not being entirely reasonable there, I can kind of admire that, because I'll give you a contrast. Another famous player, so Carrigan is one of my favorite players to talk to, because he's one of the only actual pro players who talks as though he was like an analyst or like a coach or something. Like, he's got the most reasonable view on every player. But I actually think that probably fucks him when he plays SK. Because here's the thing, if I was to talk to him about what happens when he plays SK, he'd be like, well, you know, Fallen is very smart with how he's playing aggressively, and Fur is coming in the bathrooms, and we've got to kind of like play a bit more forwards on Overpass, but then a bit more back on Mirage. And the problem is, he doesn't go in and go, right, let's just give it our best shot. Maybe we win, maybe we lose. He's sort of already like, fuck, they're going to be so good, and this is going to work yet. This probably won't work over here.
Yeah, if you try to reasonably look at SK, they're going to beat you. Like, reasonably, they're going to win. So.
It sounds weird, but as great as it is if you weren't in the game, I think it actually hurts them a bit if you're in the game.
It makes sense. Because, yeah, like, if you just, like, look at SK and try to break down how you're going to reasonably beat them, they're probably going to win. So, like, you just can't really look at
I played with two players that are exactly like that, like, complete opposites. Like, Rick is the most confident player I've ever played with. Literally goes into every game thinking he's the best player, regardless of whether Cold's in the server. Nico doesn't matter. And then Kenny Kusta is the literal opposite, but also has, like, a lot of skill. But he's like the total opposite that like always goes into a game thinking like, oh, it's just a game, dude. Let's just play. Let's just do this, and like plays other games and stuff like that. Doesn't apply himself as much into CS that if he did watch a lot of demos and if he did have that passion that like someone like Rick has, he would be so much better. At least like based on theory. So like I played with both extremes, and it just kind of like you could tell, right, the way the players play when it's like 13-13. Rick will be like, dude, get me like on train. He'll be like, dude, just flash me out of mid right now. I want to go for a pick. Kenny will be like, look, like, what do you want to do? Like, tell me what to do. So like, he'll let you think for him. So that's the difference.
That's the funny thing for that sort of player, like the ones that we're talking about that like just lack that confidence or drive, or even just don't think that they're as good as they are. Yeah. That's what's infuriating though, because I bet when you watch a player like that, you're thinking like, "Fuck, dude, give me your skills and my brain, and I'll fucking dominate this shit," Yeah.
No, exactly. It's the same. It's just because I played with them on the same team, and it's so funny the difference between the two, and like when the games are really close and the pressure's high. One player wants to really win it for us, and then the other player just really wants to play it safe. And it's like it's just interesting to see like how much of a mental game CS really could be,
Well, that's actually why I say I don't think you can actually teach people like that raw confidence, because I know that most people who overcome those issues, so I actually know that this is what Astralis did. One of the ways they overcame being the team that had, they always had the potential in that team to win the championship like 3 years ago or something, but they never did. And what happened was one of the ways they overcame it was like, first of all, when Carrigan joined, he like switched up some things about which maps they focused on. So suddenly they felt more confident because they were like, right, well, we're specializing on overpass. So we've got a map that no one else is practicing, and that's going to either shift the pick ban to us, or we play them on it and we get a free map win. Right, that's a cool way to kind of short circuit people worrying about the team being Fnatic and them being better than you. But what they did in the modern Astralis when they got Glaive was because they went back to like a super tactical style. Now a player in this team doesn't have to think like, oh fuck, like I'm not feeling my aim right now, what's going to happen when I take this duel? He's like, oh no, we're on a tactic, right? So I'm going to run in here, I'm going to try and kill this guy here. If I die, who cares, right? A flash is coming in, my teammates are coming in, they'll trade for me, they'll cover. And in a weird way, that type of tactical style, because you just put in your mind, you're like, oh, it's the team effort, it's not about me. That preparedness takes away some of it. I don't think it's not the same as having the mad confidence, but it kind of like an artificial bridge, I think, a little bit.
No, too much. It's like, hey, you have to be in the middle. Sorry, Corey. I was just going to say, you have to be in the middle. Like, you have to have some structure, but if you have too much structure, it could hurt a team. It could hurt players on the team from really showing their potential because they're sitting there throwing a flash or a smoke in a setup where like they instinctively would be running out and going for the pick. So, which would probably have been the right play in that situation. So like a lot of the times that hurts. So.
Well, the other end of the equation, okay. So obviously the most extreme version of like playing almost without tactics is Faze at the moment. Well, the opposite, to give the analogy of what you just said there, is North to me. Right. Because they try to always adhere to the execute. And I actually think that's why people only think Config's good in that team. Like, I think the other players are actually pretty good. It's just that you're never going to see, as you said there, Davey. The difference is, in Heroic, Valde's the star player. In North, he's another player, and it's his job to do this one thing this round. He doesn't have a choice to go, you know what, I'm feeling it. I'm just going to push out behind them, kill 3 of them in the fucking... Like, he's not doing that shit, is he? So if it goes to plan, he can win, but he's not just going to go and do some shit that like some Cloud9 player would.
That's what I'm saying. You can't have an extreme.
I'm just from my personal experience of playing with the many different players is that like it's one of those things where like you said, if you do an actual tactic, actual set strat, it does dissolve all responsibility from the players as long as they remember the strat, obviously, which people can forget.
Yeah,
but
that's a big if.
But assuming the strat is run correctly, they don't really have, like you said, they don't have to think. They just have to do. And if you've run it enough in scrims and practice, it should be semi-natural. So they go out, they do their job. You either win or you don't. That's how like strats. That's how they work in my mind. Is it's kind of like the strat works, you win, great. They counter it, you lose. Like it's a lot harder to grind on a strat. If you execute an A on Mirage, usually you come out, you kind of take the site, you plant, and then you've kind of won at this point a lot of the time, unless they're playing a retake. If they're playing a retake, it's going to be one of those things where, you're going to have to earn it. They're going to see you smoke shit off, molly everything out. But if you actually kill the people on the site, it's usually like you've either won the round or you've lost unless you fuck up. But when you play like the kind of SK style where you're kind of like take map control, the problem with this style that I find a lot of players, especially NA, have is like it becomes like a lot more chemistry and teamwork. Like it's less about all right, I have to do this. It's more like, okay, my teammate's here. I should be here ready to trade off of where he is. And when people don't have that like rotations in their mind and they can't understand that, like, okay, I'm top connector on Mirage, my teammate's Halls, and my teammate's like in ladder room. Well, obviously no one can be jungle on you or window room, like in that jungle corner, because your teammate's in the ladder room. You're a connector, so you don't really have to look to your right. Your teammate Halls can actually see if he's close to you. He technically could be like on the left of like the stairs, but he's probably not there because usually you'll see him. So if you time everything correctly and the guy comes out the halls and kind of peeks CD spawn, you can kind of come out at the same time and you can kind of take A with like 3 dudes. You know what I mean? Like, and then the other guy could be T ramp, like kind of waiting to like come out at the right time and kind of like, you know, just trade whatever wherever they happen to be. And if you do that correctly on Mirage, it's like really hard to stop as a CTs. Like you've lost all map control and like you're getting pinched from every angle. But people will fuck that up. The Halls guy will go too early, or the Halls guy might come out.
This is literally SK's default. This is exactly how SK takes A on Mirage. This is exactly how they do it.
So the Halls guy comes out, he peeks spawn. If your connector guy doesn't go at the right time, then he just dies for no reason. You know what I mean? Like, or if he doesn't get a kill, you know, he may come out, he fights the spawn guy, but he's opening that up for the T ramp guy to come out and the connector guy to come out. And now you have a dude in ladder room kind of holding cat / like any rotates through there. And everything's covered. But, you know, if people take 1 second too long, like CSGO is always, like I said, a game about timings. Like, you know, that's what separates SK from, you know, a lesser team. It's not always just the skill of just hitting shots. Like, in my opinion, a lot of premier players hit nice shots. Like they're good skilled players, but it's just
I just think people forget how to adapt, dude. Like off of the strat. Like sometimes your strat won't work perfectly like it did in your dry run or your practice, or even in the scrims you played before. There's gonna be one flash, like while you're doing mid control, someone's gonna throw a flash through connector, and one of your players is gonna die. But then to be able to adapt and still win the round, I feel like a lot of people just are so focused on the strat itself, or like what Thoorin was saying, like you're so focused on throwing this specific nade or flash or smoke that sometimes you'll throw it, like sometimes the person that's supposed to throw those nades will die and there is no adaptation. It's just like, I think that's the main problem with North America, is like it's not quick enough. Whereas I think Fallen, and it's not necessarily maybe just Fallen, maybe it could be like other people calling on the team too, but I just think SK adapts faster and better than a lot of other teams. I think it's the same for Astralis. I think they just adapt well to where like they'll have players in like different extremities of the map, and they'll use nades properly and distract properly so other people can take control of something else, and they'll win like a round 3v5 that they should have never won just because they played those 3 players played the round perfectly.
Well, that's why I think, like, for me, SK is clearly the best team in the world, because like what they do is basically break all the rules. Like the way even a tactical team would do it. In fact, funny enough, Fallen himself used to run proper tactics when he didn't have these good players. He used to just run like a normal in-game leader. But what happens is somehow, I assume it's him, because like, what's the coincidence that he's the one connecting factor with all these lineups? Somehow this guy's got the other people in the team to have the same like worldview on the game. Like, this is what I should do. This is what I'm going to do. And if you have people who do that, you set up map control as though you were going to run a set strat. But then from that, you read the game and you pick what's the right option now. Right? That's actually 10 times harder than running a strat, because you can fuck it up, like Semphis said, in so many ways. One guy, you might even make the right read, but then the guy does it wrong. You know, he goes in slightly too early, or he doesn't actually understand he's supposed to be baiting for this guy, and he goes out and dies with no reason.
Just one person hesitating can ruin the whole round.
Exactly. But if you pull it off like they can, I mean, they don't do it every time, obviously, but, you know, most of the time, it's the hardest style in the world to beat. How are you supposed to read what they're doing? How are you supposed to counter it?
Because they're just good
I'll
at
tell you that you
you
can't read what they're doing. When you're playing against SK, you don't know what they're going
to
do.
You have to kill them. Honestly, you have to hit your shots. Like
you have to, exactly. That's exactly
especially
on CT
now,
side, at least. Like,
especially now, because they've earned this like god status where everyone's like,
the
way they play. Yeah. Right. So now that they have that, you can't be afraid to take fights versus them. The second you do, you've already lost. Like, you've already lost going into the game. Like, the second like you let them play their game, it's just like already over, because they will play their game better than you'll play yours, most likely, just based off the way the players are, the way that team plays.
Well, it's like if you remember, the one series that SK with Bolts has lost was against Nip at Oakland, and that was where Rez was just entering like a god all day long.
On door, right? On cash.
You can have a chance if you do that, right? But that's not really it's not really something you can replicate. Like, just go up door every time and kill 2 people. Okay, mate. See ya. That's your job.
Even the previous Oakland, actually, with a completely different lineup, I remember like Forrest was taking fights he never took before, like, you know, you're just taking, it was a cobble, I think was the final map, and these guys were just taking fights down middle, like on cobble. They were literally like as CTs looking down mid and killing multiple players just because they were taking the fights. Like Forrest was using his skill set, whereas a lot of the times teams, even like players like Config, when North is playing SK, they just play so afraid, like.
Yes.
Or like they're just afraid to do certain things because they don't want to die, or maybe it's like a tactical, like they can't die in that strat. I don't know what
give
it is.
themselves like what you call, you know, in MMA they call it a puncher's chance. You don't give yourself that. You just play so quiet, like, oh, I'll try and not make a mistake, but it's like in doing so you don't ever give yourself an opportunity, and you just get gradually like choked out, like, oh, good night everyone. It's like you've got to kind of, you know, listen, if they're going to beat you anyway and they're better than you might as well just go out there fucking swinging and hope you connect, right?
Right, and the game is confidence. Like, it's confidence is key in the game. It's super cliche, but it's just the truth. Like once you start doing things with confidence, even if it's like a really low percentage play, chances are it's going to work if you're more confident than the other player. So it's like one of those things too. I don't know. It's such a mental game that
CS is one of those games where, like, at the end of the day, if you do hit your shots, like, you can win any round, right? Like you could do the worst strat ever, but like if you 180 flick one tap someone, I mean, like that shit happens. But I'm not saying you can't rely on that at all. But it's different than other games like League or Dota and stuff. It's harder to like just buy a deagle and like one deag their Awper mid or something. Like, you know, like it might not be likely you do it every time, but you can do it in CS. And when we beat SK on Inferno, I mean, it's just, you know, a BO1 type game. It was like in OT. The only thing that I can really say is, like, I don't think our Inferno was that awesome. It wasn't like our best map or anything. It wasn't like it is a map that you can beat anyone on. That is the one thing I think everyone can kind of agree. Inferno is the one map that you can upset a better team on it. Like, it's always kind of been like that. Yeah, sure, Cash too, unless they're like Cash is their best map or something. Yeah. But on Inferno, the only thing I really think we did was we hit our shots, and like that seems like lame to say, but we won on our CT. And at the end of the day, Fur was trying to lurk mid. He was too confident. We killed him. And then they were in a 4v5 a lot of the time because he was playing too confident, and we held our sights. Like, that's all that, like, we didn't win some miraculous 1v3s and like shit like that.
We did win a miraculous 3v5 though. There was one round where they killed both of us at B, and they thought, honestly I don't know what they thought. I don't know if they thought we were going to be rotating over to B or something, but all three of our A guys said, all right, fuck it, just this round's over, just save an A
There's
site.
no point, right?
Yeah, they're like, just save an A, and they all came back to A and they all died. And it was like, well, that was very fortunate.
I just think
that should never happen.
People just go into games against SK, it almost seems like this. I don't know for sure, but like they're not going to make any mistakes. Like, they just think SK is not going to make a single mistake. But there's a lot of times where I see players just by themselves roaming around that you could easily, if countered the right way, it could isolate those players to get yourself an advantage. But I don't think people abuse these players enough. And so players like Coldzera and Fur especially gets away with so much shit because of how much respect he's gained as a player. Like, it blows my fucking mind. So every time I watch an SK demo and I see this guy still entering connector on Mirage as a T, just somehow gets in there with one flash, it's just like, and gets kills. And I'm just like, dude, like, he's been doing this for years now. Like, people should be punishing this, or at least anteing this one player specifically to get yourself an advantage, and then you can play passive if you want to. But people let SK play their game a lot, and I think that's
it's true. Like, on Inferno, there was a round that I had versus them where it was like, I just decided, like, we lost all map control, 5v5, and it's like, oh shit, well, they all could be in banana about to, go B, and any B players know that if you get hit 5v2 with a full execute, it's very hard to stop. It's very, very hard. Like, everything gets mullied out.
It's still hard. You have to get like 3, and that's impossible almost. Yeah, if they have to get execute.
So I was like, all right, I'm gonna peek top mid, clear this. If no one's here, I'm gonna dip back I'm gonna go stack B. So I peek mid. They're like just walking around top mid, like with their dicks in their hands, and I just shot them all on the side of the head and just killed them all. And like, a lot of times though, people will be too afraid versus SK to even like do that. I'm not saying it was the smartest play, but we needed something. Like, you always need some info on certain maps. Like, some maps you can just hide in the site on like train. Like, you don't technically need info on that map. But I think Inferno and Cash are two maps that you kind of like. You need to kind of know where they're going or you'll lose. Like, you're gonna get beat if you don't.
Yes. Yeah. Well, funny thing is, I can actually give you some examples of like this from other games. So actually, even if you don't know League of Legends, it's not going to be like game specific. So you can understand the basic premise. Like, one of the best Western players in League of Legends was a Danish player called Froggen, who used to play in a team like Evil Geniuses, and then he went to NA for a while. And he was like really famous for being amazing at hitting skill shots, which is basically the abilities that you have to actually aim. You have to sort of like throw him like a projectile. You don't just like click on the guy.
Or something,
yeah.
Kind of.
And the whole reason, and I once asked him, you know, like, why are you so good at hitting skill shots? Like, you know, you'd expect he's going to say, oh, I have amazing hand-eye coordination, or, you know, I practice them a million times. What he actually said is, he said, I don't understand it. He said, when I play against people, I watch everyone else play, and it's almost like these guys walk into my skill shots. Like, they don't know how, he said, when I watch them play other people, they dodge properly. And when they play versus me, they dodge like idiots. Partly because, basically, what I'm getting at is, because he's so famous for hitting skill shots, people like don't do what they would normally do. They're like, oh fuck, I've got to second guess myself. Like, should I like move backwards, forwards instead of? And so the same thing happens, right? Actually, with the best League of Legends player, which is a guy called Faker, a Korean player. And the thing is, he's basically like the people like Simple Nico that we're talking about now. It's like, you know, one of those guys who's like mechanically so bananas compared to anyone you've ever seen. And one of the things he's able to do in the game is famously, you would think if you had a superstar player like that, and he, by the way, plays like the main carry role in the game, the mid lane, you would think you'd put all your resources into him every game. Like, you'd send your fucking jungler to gank his lane 24/7, get him ahead of his other lane and win the game, right? Well, they did at the beginning of when he played in this team. But in the later years, their coach was such a fucking genius. He figured out, why don't I actually just win the game? Because since he's already this good, he doesn't even need help. He'll never be behind. He'll always be ahead anyway by himself. And since everyone assumes that we should play through him, let's actually send the jungler and put the resources elsewhere on the map so that they're doing well. They're doing ahead. Now we've got like 2 out of the 3 lanes is winning. And what Faker was able to do individually was he would play super aggro in the lane in a way no mid laner would play unless their jungler's like about to come, or unless he's got like a ward that his jungler already placed in the brush and he knows that your jungler can't be there. But here's the genius detail. His jungler wasn't coming and there was no ward in that brush. But because he's Faker, and this is the key detail, because he had the credit that you thought his jungler must be there, he could do this all the time and get like mad little advantages that no one else would get. Because even if a very good player, you'd go like, I don't know if he has seen that ward. Let's go in on him, you know, like, but you just wouldn't do it because in your brain you were like, he'd never do something as retarded as that. He must know that they're there. So it sounds weird, but this is actually just a mental effect that you can have. But the problem is, to get the mental effect, you have to be one of the best ever. So we can't all just create it tomorrow ourselves.
I just don't think people abuse it enough is all. Like, I feel like some of these players are so easily abused if you just...
Dude, you know the example you gave of Fur when he pushes? I'm not exaggerating, right? This sounds like something like a Silver would say that doesn't play the game professionally. But if I was Karrigan and I'm Faze and we play, right, if we play SK, 100% we're playing Overpass, right? Because we love the map. It's one of their best, you know, it's going to get played. I would actually, on some of my T rounds, just do a strat that doesn't make any sense against anyone else. I would do like 3 nades to the party at the beginning of the round. Because you know what? If Fur doesn't go there, cool. He hasn't been able to push that area. I know I can push up. If he goes there, we've just been hit by 3 nades.
He's literally bathrooms every round or party.
No one would. Here's the thing. No one would do that because it just doesn't work against any other team. It'd be a waste of time. It wouldn't be worth practicing that. Like, it'd be just a waste of grenades. But in a mad way, I actually think there'd be a logic to it because it'd force something different out of him. You know, you can't just keep doing the same shit to you every round.
Yeah, just to gain that little bit of advantage. Because I feel like once you throw something random, if you throw something random at a team and they never saw it coming, they're already going to be aware of it, and you're already in their head at that point. Then you can start playing your own game.
What's next? Yeah, like, for example, do they multi me off? Semphis is right. So let's say the first 2 rounds, no matter where he is, I do the 3 nades onto that corner. And if he goes there once, he gets hit. Let's say he doesn't go there another time, right? Let's say now he tries to switch it up. So now what I do is, when he pushes up, I molly behind him at the bathroom entrance. So it's like, okay, you pushed up there, you can't get back now. So even in this scenario, by the way, I didn't say that we ever kill him and that we win the round, but we're at least going to change what he does.
You make him uncomfortable, right?
You can't just do the same thing every round and just be like, haha, look at this shit. Because like you were saying about the train kills at fucking the ladder on when he was just killing everyone coming down there, like, his confidence must just be like out of the universe at that point. He's like, I can do anything to these motherfuckers, you know. He's in his exact comfort zone, isn't he?
That was another thing that annoyed me because, like, I think when they were playing Faze and Fur was in ladder 2 rounds in a row, and 2 rounds in a row he got 2 kills, but they both dropped individually.
Identically as well. They did the same thing. It's like they were like, "You won't do it again. Let's do it."
And to me, in my head, I'm thinking like you could have done the double stack drop, and you would have had a better chance for sure. I'm not saying you would have killed him, but you have a much better chance. And I feel like a lot of teams half-ass things versus like players like that. That those players that you know are going to be there, or there's a high chance they're going to be there, and you have.
Here's the thing, though, FNS. Like, I can't know what the Faze players were thinking, but whoever the second guy is who drops down, it's going to be hard to convince that guy to go down at the right time. He might go down. You know, when people got out of spawn a bit late, you know, when they don't want to go in first on the rush. It's like that. If the first guy drops down, I might delay a tenth of a second before I drop down as well. I might not drop down right next to him and get sprayed down by this guy.
But there's a lot you could do to take ladder control now. If you even want to take ladder control, I just feel like they weren't doing enough of it, and it's the same reason why Cloud9 lost to Astralis when Cloud9 had Rubino. Or sorry, Astralis had Rubino and they were in the last tournament. And this is like the same thing that kept happening, is like C9 would never take ladder control and stuff like this. Is very basic stuff. But a lot of the other games, a lot of the other games C9 played, they would take ladder control. So I was just confused as to like why they changed that up. But maybe it was like a read that they had, but it was just weird to me that like these little things that you can do that could give you an advantage, teams just don't take those advantages. Or
that's
like,
also though why I think that actually Faze, like what's mad is they're still an amazing team. They have still won all these tournaments and made all these finals. They are just going so hard on skill that it's almost like they deserve SK to exist, to be able to have the skill and the style then to just crush them flat. Because like I have no doubt in some of these rounds, like actually I bet Faze don't like super duper anti-strat and try and think like, fuck what we do. Like, you know, we're talking now. I bet they go the other way and they go, oh, forget about all those past losses. No, don't matter. Like, we've got to have confidence. We've got to play our game. I bet that's like the team talk.
Maybe not
right?
Kerrigan, but the rest of them for sure.
Sure. I'll bet like Nico thinks that, for example, right? And so I actually think that's the flaw, because so many times I'll bet he runs out in a certain spot, and versus any other people, he probably just straight one bangs him in the head, sprays the other guy down, and he's like, right, no problem. Never had to worry about that. But you've got to have a plan B at some point, surely.
Yeah. I just never got the ladder thing, because you could even if they didn't have like a set strat, you know, some people double molly and stuff, you can still drop a nade or two down there. Like you can still throw like something like, and I'm not saying it'll kill them, but like even if let's say your nade does 40 damage, like the first guy drops, gets maybe one hit, the second guy only has to hit him once or twice, you know, like
what bothered me was they didn't do it
anything
early. You know, when like teams go down early and you're praying that your spawn was good enough that you beat the guy going into ladder. They didn't do that. That's fair. Like I understand you're trying to beat him in spawn. They did the late ladder drop with one person and then another person. And I was just like, at that point, it's like if he is there, you're dead unless you get a flying headshot.
Well, dude, I play ladder. It's the easiest shot ever. Like it's like they just drop down and.
Well, they also did it in isolation. Like they did a slow setup on the map, and then you could tell what happened is they hadn't got a good read on what to do. So they were like, we'll go out ladder. And what they did is just in isolation, drop down ladder. Like, here's the thing. If you want to do that and it's not working, why not do that? But at the same time, two people bust out of middle. Now let's let him pick which way he wants to look. Because you know what? If he's looking at you and killing you, he gets shot in the side of the head by a guy out middle.
Right.
You know?
By
the way, obviously,
like, aren't abused. It's hindsight, of course.
Yes,
but like,
just as a caveat, obviously, I wouldn't know any of this. I wouldn't do any of this myself in the game. It's very easy to say it when you're not in the game, but
it's just one of those things where like this little tiny thing would have won you the round, or what got you that kill specifically. But it's like they don't do these things, and maybe it's like a mental thing. I don't know. And like my teams have also made these mistakes. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying like it's just interesting to like just that mental aspect of the game where like people like will slip up a little bit like that, and it just costs you the entire game. And it gives the other guy so much confidence.
This is one of the things I think makes Counter-Strike really compelling, though, is that if you were like an outsider and you came in and you heard how many hours people practice and they've got coaches and analysts, you'd probably naively think, right, that it was something like tennis, where in tennis, there's like an established meta game of how you play, and the best players know like which shots they can hit. And what happens is, this might sound weird, but there's a reason why in tennis, actually, because they have perfect seeding and like, you know, the scoring system actually means that the better player typically wins a best of 5 set match. That actually the best players, it's no joke, Federer made 27 semifinals in a row at one point in his career. Now, the reason he could do that is because in tennis, as bizarre as this sounds, if you're like a 10 out of 10 level player and you play a 9 out of 10 level player, you just play the game out and you probably just narrowly win. And he does things that are similar to you, but just not quite as good. You both play a vaguely similar game and you just win, right? And people would probably think if they came from the outside, oh, Counter-Strike's probably like that. You know, like you're probably both doing all these correct moves. It's not. What's great about it is everyone's doing mistakes all over the place. There's so many things you can exploit. After the game, you always know 5 things you should have done differently. Or
economy is also a massive factor.
I've always
it's super interesting. It keeps you like excited about the game. You never feel like, oh, I was 100% going to lose that game no matter what, right?
No, I've always said the teams that usually win in Counter-Strike are the teams that make the least mistakes. It's not the team that is necessarily has the most polished style or all the best players. It's whoever makes the least mistakes on that day, because there's so many mistakes that happen throughout a game that not everyone would pick up on. But as a player, like when you're playing it, like even like there's been games where you've had. Well, maybe not you, Finesse, but there's been games where you've had like 30 kills, and then you look back, and you think, and you can think of like 4 or 5 rounds where you've made like just mistakes that could have got you like that could have won you these 2 rounds or these 2 rounds. And every single player, when you go back and watch your own game, even if you've won the game 16-10 or something, and your team looks like you've played well, there's always like multiple rounds where you can look and say, I made that mistake there, I made that mistake there, I made that mistake there. And
dude,
that's what's super
I mean,
interesting about it.
He mentioned it earlier. Just think about how much regret that Dignitas team must have had when they played CLG at that major, and they were like, "What the fuck were we doing? We kept going. FNS was killing us. What was in the drop room? Like, fucking, we just ruined our whole T side. We're idiots."
When
like,
did
come
this
on,
turn
guys.
into? What happened?
The problem is,
me and Thoorin are in a side chat here. We're thinking like, all right, is this where we're gonna start roasting Finesse? All right now, go.
And also, like
KNG, so now you're an easy target. You gotta count some hard guy.
I mean, right now I don't have a team, and the last time Davey played me, he beat me the first time in his career. So I mean, I'll let him have it.
No, Finesse, dude, I'm 2-0 in matches that matter.
Oh my god!
And if Kerrigan's watching this and he he was listening to our train analyst stuff, just know that I got 60 0'd by SK on train, so I you can take that for what it is. Also didn't kill Fern ladder once, I don't think. So.
The whole point of, as I said with that caveat, is we're not really saying that we would do that. Our point is just that, like, I wish I could sort of make them play the way I think they could. And they would win the game. Sometimes they might not win it. I actually think they'd probably go 50-50 with SK. I think it'd be a even rivalry. But I think they've got a mixture of like style mismatch, and then unfortunately you add in a massive serving of fucking psychological issues from all the trauma of the past beatings. It's like that's why it feels impossible for them to win now.
Part of me feels like if you watch a team like Faze play SK, it's like you look at the game, and you kind of said this before. But you look at the game and you're like, oh well, they fucked up versus Fur, right? Like they could have done so many things. And it's like, well, first off, they probably trade even with a bad drop versus most players, just because they're better, right? Like they just like that probably, even though it's not good, it probably works versus like Rubino or something,
Well,
like
that's
the
problem, isn't it? Right? You're sort of training yourself not to be able to do it when you play Fur because it works all the other times.
Yeah, and then on the flip side of that, it's like Kerrigan probably can't make things too complicated because, like you said, they got so much skill that it's like, what is the point of like having these triple Molotov strats with 5 smokes and 10 flashes when Nico can kind of just run out one tap someone?
When I said when I said North is the exact opposite, because I actually think they're too restrictive sometimes. Yeah. Like in no universe am I saying they should like have North level executes with these players. They'd be a way worse team. They'd win like fucking 20% of the games they do now. Like the whole point is you've got to let some of those guys off the leash. Their problem is they've got like 3 people that are off the leash half the time, and it's like, well, what do we do now when that doesn't work? Because there is no plan B. They've got the ultimate plan A and no plan B.
That's what we talked about, like the 2 extremes, right? They have to have a balance, and I think they just don't have enough of that yet. But it's weird because Kerrigan's actually, if you watch Faze demos, they are pretty tactical on certain maps, like Mirage specifically. The nades that they throw and how they split connector and A, they do like a fast split or they do a fast split B. A lot of people would miss that fact because the rounds end so quickly because the kills are gotten. But like the flashes and nades that they throw to get to those spots and to get in like map control really quickly are insane. Like those are gone over 100%, right? So
they have really good nade usage. They really do. Like across the board, they have really.
Which is why it's weird
because
I think Kerrigan is tactical, which is why it's hard for me to believe that he missed that Fur would be ladder, or like, you know what I mean? So that's all.
That's also why.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just
going to say Inferno.
Inferno. I think they're so good at just because it's not that tactical of a map, right? Like you can kind of get by on skill, and they never lose on it. Like they just run around, and like your skill's always going to overwhelm the other team on that map, and it's probably why they just rape SK on every time they play them, pretty much. But as soon as it becomes a little bit more tactical, then SK kind of gains a little bit of an advantage, I feel like, because whereas SK are equally talented, I do think their like depth is a lot higher, and their roles are a little bit better just because Taco is like more. Honestly, they just bait him, but like it works, right? Like
yes. Well, there's also the factor that. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say is I just think like Taco's like an undervalued player on like a top team in the fact that like he plays all all small sites with Cold, and Cold is always being set up by Taco
By the
every
way,
site.
that's
Like,
another detail you have to throw in.
Yeah.
Like we did the
Yeah.
fur analysis, dude. Where's the Taco playing with Simple and fucking Nico?
yeah.
They don't. He
Yeah.
doesn't. They don't have it. Like that's like a fucking butler who's like, "Yes, my lord, you rang," and he's like coming and fucking getting you out of jams and shit. Like they're just
Yeah.
having to do it on their own.
Yeah. So it's like Taco's always setting up or being baited, or Cold's baiting Taco, you know, Cash, B site, or you know, whatever other map, Mirage. They play a lot of sites together. And then T side, when they go in B on Mirage or they go in a site, it's always Taco as the first guy, and oftentimes he's a little bit ahead of everyone else. Like, you know, most teams you would think like you want the first guy and then the second guy right behind him. A lot of times they'll send out Taco like a little bit further than most teams would, and they'll just rain flashes for him, and it's almost like he's like a binoculars, like he's just trying to find out like where people are, and he'll just get, if you ever watch him take a site, he'll guess, he'll hard clear spots, and if they're there, great, he kills them.
Yes.
If not, he's just giving the comm of where he died from, and then the big guns kind of come in as like the second wave, and they just slaughter everyone. And like that's a like underlooked at of like why Cold is so successful, is he's always being set up for these trades. And yeah, I don't know.
Well, that's what's funny is like that's another example of where a lot of casual fans like miss aspects of the game. Like it's a famous thing that I always get triggered by is when like, you know, for example, like someone on a map like Mirage is a great example where your entry guy runs in and he just doesn't check a corner that like a scrub might check in FPL because he's not playing with a team. He's just going like, oh, what am I doing here? And so he checks every corner, right? If Taco checks every corner, that tactic's going to be way shitty. He's not going to get in properly.
Yeah.
He's not going to be able to, like, he doesn't have mad skills. He probably needs to, like, hard aim at a corner and try and pre-fire a guy. This is how it's going to work. So I realize if at a low level where you're just playing a mix, you wouldn't do that. But that actually helps that he gambles at. And then secondly, like you're saying with that, he gets that fucking treatment. That's like a nightmare. I've seen some entry players have this before. It's usually when you're an entry who's not got mad skills, so you're not going to run in and just like apex them, you know. You're going to run in and your job usually is get info, die, just like start shooting one guy. Sometimes they give you that treatment where it's like, right, we're going to flash you and them. It's like, you're going to be blind, but don't worry, they will be as well. Like, I'd like to see many pro players who'd sign up for that duty. Like, that guy's a fucking soldier. I don't want to do that. Sounds like a nightmare.
No one wants to do that.
What about the round where your team blinds you, but not the enemy, and he's just behind a wall? You know, like it's a nightmare.
No,
And
those
it's like
rounds suck.
if you're ever the first guy out halls on like Inferno, you're just dead. Like
Exactly.
like you're always dead. Like
Your job is to attract their fire.
Unless you jump into
Yeah.
a lane. You jump in a lane, no one's looking at you.
Yeah, but if you're a good player and you jump into pit, which you're supposed to do, then you just die. Like the
Yes.
Pope guy, graveyard, like you die. But usually the strat's design that the second wave kind of comes out, and you're looking at sight, looking everywhere, and hopefully you get the kills. But people talk so much shit about these players, and it's like, well, no one is really gonna succeed in these roles, right? Like you can't, like CT side, don't get me wrong. I believe personally that you can thrive in any spot on CT if you're a good player. Like depending.
I mean, Cold Zera plays Ivy. That's like one of the hardest spots on any map across, you know, like across anything. And Cold Zera plays Ivy, so
He
it's
plays drop on Cobble, right?
yeah. Drop's not like hard though, because you don't actually play it. You just like listen and then rotate around.
It's a lame ass spot, but
Yeah, it's boring, but it's not. You don't die a lot playing drop.
if you play in drop, you die.
Yeah, well, if you try and hold drop, you die. But no one tries to hold drop.
He doesn't even like. Actually, I don't know if he changed this, but like he's even used to let Taco op B and didn't even op. Just like
I know. I always thought that was weird because
the funny thing is, you gave the best example there, Semphis. Like, if you're doing a tactic where the job is you're going to bust out of the balcony on Inferno, right? If you're the first guy, think about what your job is. You're going out maybe through a smoke, so you can't even see them, and you have that fucking thing where like it takes longer for you to have vision.
Yeah.
Secondly, maybe you're even flashed. Thirdly, what you're literally doing is jumping out, falling, so you can't properly fire. And until you hit the ground, you basically have the worst firing scenario possible. And you're doing it versus probably on most teams, like one of the best players is going to be playing pit, and he's got some of the best spray in the world. And he's got 2 whole seconds to just shoot at you while you're falling in midair. Like, your job there is not to do any damage or get any kills. Like, if you can, cool, great bonus. But like,
if you get
that
the
guy
kill,
actually
you probably
should
win.
that guy probably should be dying every round that he does that, unfortunately. That's just his job.
Yeah.
But here's the key thing. Sometimes him dying because the guy's spraying him is why his teammate kills him, obviously, isn't it?
Yeah. Because it does take longer to kill someone falling because, like, just the way CSGO works,
Sure.
like you just, it's hard to just two-tap someone that's, like, flying through the air.
You're going to spray for sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's just easier to spray him down or safer. But yeah, like you said, then the second guy comes out, kills that guy,
Exactly.
and then it really comes down to the jungle and the lane guy. Like, does he slaughter? Does the lane guy just get 2 more kills? Then you probably lose. But if the third guy comes out like he's supposed to, looking at sight, and just taps that guy in the head, you win. So it's, I still think hull strat, burst strats they're good. They're just random. They're like, you know, they're gonna just catch them off guard.
Utility based completely.
Yeah,
your utility's good. Great.
Yeah, yeah. But and it also depends on where the jungle player decides to play. Like the jungle players that play closer to mid and they don't leave mid, then you're likely to get a 5v2 on the lane and the pit guy because he's not really there. But the people that play further back jungle, then you have a third guy kind of like there to crossfire. So it just depends on.
What's funny is a lot of those rounds are won because like that guy jumps into pit, and then even the guy that's holding wrap will most likely, most teams will throw a moto smoke, so he'll go through the smoke and go sight, and now there's no one playing a wrap. So one of the T's will just wrap around, kill the rotator, and then he'll just pinch the sight really late in the round. Like that guy's just fully bait, the guy that's jumping up out. But yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot more to like CS than like some of the casual fans like really get. Like they look at something like, oh, that's so dumb, but it's like, well, it's not really dumb. It's just like it just didn't work out the way that.
Well, what's funny is like the way we described it there is in that scenario, most times you actually are just dying. Like you're looking like you're doing nothing and you're dying. And that's literally what we want you to do. That's the only dynamic by which we're actually going to win this round in this setting, you know.
Yeah.
we can't win flawlessly. That's going to happen so rarely.
No, you're always going to have people dying. Like entering B is a lot more favorable on Inferno for the entry.
Sure,
like all the battles are pretty.
You can gamble on an
fair.
angle, go, see if he's just here, you know. You can't do a shot on A if you go up the balcony and face off.
Yeah, and unless you get killed by like the boost above the smoke or something, usually you had a chance. Like you had a chance to shoot him, but yeah, some of the A ones are just gambles. Like you go up lane and the dude is graveyard. He stands up, shoots you in the head. It's like, well, fuck. And
so I have a question for everybody here. That's going away from this. I think we covered it a little bit not too long ago. So I'm just mostly going to ask Thoorin what his opinion on it is. Do you think the current coaching rules are good? Are they fair? What do you think? And if not, what do you think a more ideal system would be?
I think the current coaching rules are ass. Like, I actually thought it was a really good setup before we could talk. Like, I think that entire argument, like, this is one of the big problems I have in most sort of discussions where you're trying to have, like, I'm not going to say intellectual, you're talking about fucking Counter-Strike, but, you know, you're trying to sort of mentally think of the pros and cons of something. So many people just sort of, I guess people are trained to with like politics and TV shows. They just hear what sounds like a vaguely good point and they just repeat it even if they haven't thought it through. So what people famously always say, I think Valve themselves believed this, was like, oh, if you allow coaches to talk all the time, everyone will just stack 5-star aimers and have a brain behind them. Like, what fucking team did that? Tell me which team was doing that. I didn't see a single team doing that. And if they were doing it, they weren't good.
I
like
guess
that,
maybe you could make an argument for Fnatic, right?
They were, but even then, I don't think they listened to the coach that much. Like, I think they just kind of let that, like, it was Jumpy at the end and it was Vuggo before. I think they just kind of half listened to him. He wasn't like, you know, it's not like the analogy they would give would be if, like, you took G2 now and fucking Existence was the coach and he was like, tactic beat, you know, like reading the whole game. Like, that doesn't exist. Like, that was a really ridiculous extreme. So to me, it wasn't a problem to have these coaches doing it. In fact, it just meant you got to choose what type of team you wanted. Like, you could choose, like, I still think you had way more value if you were like Glaive and you were in the game as the in-game leader. I think that actually still was a lot better because then I always make this analogy, right? The part people don't think about is it sounds perfect to be the coach outside of the game and have the 5 players doing it. Now there's another player can fuck up your strat. If you're in the game, most in-game leaders take a really hard role in the strat. Like, I'm going to throw that one flash that has to be timed here. If you don't do that, that's another guy who's a fucking headache for you that you have to control. That's another screen you have to watch. Like, it's actually, it has its pros and cons. You see what I mean? Like, I think whatever you do, you're going to get an edge in one way or another. So to me, I liked the fact that it opened up some more of these teams. And it meant that for some of the teams, quite frankly, some of the NA teams, I think it would help a lot because you know what? They won't recruit my boy FNS right here. He's stuck in the fucking wilderness. They won't put him on Cloud9. So at least if he can get paid 6 skrill to stand behind these motherfuckers, he might tell Stewie 2K, maybe hold off on this smoke when Rain is sat behind it, when he spray your face off, mate. That isn't. I'll reverse it here for your sake, definitely. That's not Davey behind that smoke. That's Rain. There we go. I gave you one there, FNS. That was one for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No, I think people go too hard on that. I think it was good. I
thought it was good too. And you know, the other thing is like it's not like an in-game leader coach. Like you know, like the arguments they were giving for it. It's not like they can like. It's not like they said. You know, it takes a value away from in-game leaders, like having a leader in the game. And it doesn't at all. Like because like even the coach who's watching all 5 players, they can't hear sound cues, right? Yep. There's a whole bunch of stuff. They can't be watching that player and that player. Like these guys still have to be communicating equally the same, and they still have to have someone in the game who can hear something and and maybe someone in the game. Like they still have to have, you know, people in the game that can make calls.
I'll give you an analogy, right? Here's what, right? Unfortunately, you're going to have to know this sport vaguely to get the analogy right. But I think the best analogy for this is, right, imagine tomorrow that in the NFL, they were like, right, coach can't talk to the players. Before the game and in 2 timeouts a game, he can tell the players what to do. So on offense, all you would do, right, is you wouldn't now make the game more advanced and people would be better than that, blah, blah, blah. All you would do is most teams would get way worse, except the teams who had like Peyton Manning or fucking Aaron Rodgers, some ridiculous quarterback who could like do something on the fly. Yeah, someone who could. But the whole point is someone who doesn't need a coach's input. You know, they can just. So all you do is make them OP as fuck, just like I think like Glaive is right now, Fallen, etc. And you just make everyone else like crippled. Basically, they would just be running the shittest offense ever, and you would make the game like half as good. Basically, the offense would be way more limited. You know.
And
I think it just adds putting it on top.
I think so
I always thought like even if you didn't want someone to be like take a player's role as like, you know, I guess Valve's logic was probably like they didn't want no in-game leaders in a team, right? They wanted they wanted them
I believe
to stay
they
in the
also
team.
I think the wording was along the lines, believe it or not, of they thought that some teams wouldn't be able to afford a coach and therefore they'd be at a disadvantage, which I mean, remember they did this in 2016. I think we already were at the point where like most teams got decent money and I think almost everyone had a coach anyway, right?
But yeah, but my only argument could be like, all right, if you don't want them talking all the time, let them talk in freeze time and then turn their mic off. So like they can be there to call the tactic, but they can't ghost calm. Like they can't make the mid game. You still need someone to kind of like direct, like the time of the execute would still have to be directed by someone. You'd still have to have someone to make in-game decisions, mid-game calls.
I feel like it'd be OP as fuck.
OP?
Like having a previous in-game leader or just a coach that could call strats and like have all 5 players, like even have 5 stars on a team and then have one guy in-game leading behind them. I feel like it'd be too OP because he could literally say everything. He doesn't even have to look at the screens necessarily because you've already dry ran the strats, right? Like think about it. If a team has setups consistently, like if you've gone over these setups and dry ran them, the coach isn't an idiot. Like he already sees, he doesn't have to look at fucking the guy far left screen to understand what that guy is doing, right? All he has to do is maybe glance a little bit to see where he is in terms of timing. But at the end of the day,
talking about earlier though that the biggest problem with teams, specifically in North America, but I think all non-tier 1 teams, is their lack of ability to adapt. So if you have an in-game, so if you have somebody who is a, you know, an ex-IGL coaching standing from behind, and they wait, sorry, I totally lost my train of thought. But they
wouldn't be able to adapt.
Right, but let me put it to you this way. So say it's like we're playing on train, it's a standard default round for a gun round, and I see my IB player getting pressured, or like there's comms being made. Like I hear the comms of the players. Like I know exactly what's happening where. I could literally just be like, okay, guys, play 2 inner here because I've watched the demos of this team. I know when this happens. But when you're an in-game leader and you're focusing on your game, a lot of the times you'll miss something like that or miss your cue because you're so focused on your aim or you're focused on your crosshair that a lot of the times you'll miss something that you might have otherwise heard if you were fully focused on your players' voices. So like if I'm just coaching behind them, I have nothing to do but listen, not even watch. I can just literally listen to my team's comm and just be like, okay, yeah, they do this. Did they just take box all here and they don't have any Ivy presence? Just play 2 inner here because they never go Ivy in this situation. Play 1 Ivy.
I think that's exactly what Thorm was saying earlier, is that it elevates the entire level of play, not just so.
I agree.
It was pretty much exactly what he had just said, except you're saying it as a positive and he was saying it as a negative.
Right. I feel like teams would 100% like I just feel like it would
Okay.
be too OP in terms of
No,
like,
no, because here's the counter, okay, FNS. So you do that, right? Now you go box holes. Right now, the other FNS on the other team goes, right, they pushed in there like normally we'd never go here, but FNS is going to make that call. So FNS, dark FNS, the dark side goes, no, now we're going to fake in it and then go, you know, you've got two people doing that. It's a chess game, right? Yeah.
Right, exactly, and I agree with that. But I think at the end of the day, I just think I agree with the fact that coaches should not be able to do that, by the way. Like, I don't think this should be a rule where, like, a coach could just call. I'm on that side of it because of the fact that, like, I would never want to be the coach that's calling all these strats because a lot of times it just turns into a mind game between coaches and the players are just like little fucking puppets running around.
Let me give you a counterpoint, though, right?
Yep.
You know, like almost every NA player ever, where like, yeah, there's a tactic we're doing, but he does it in his own way in the round. Or, you know what, some teams, Cloud9, they don't really want to run a real set tactic. They want to set up, right, we've got the middle on Mirage now, right, I'm going to go around here, or I'll flash and then you do whatever you want. Like 99% of pro CSGO players, they don't really like to adhere to tactics, dude. It's hard to get them to buy in, right? So, like, in a perfect world, like we're describing here, yeah, so you're telling them all this stuff. They're all pawns on the chessboard. Try making fucking Nico and Stewie 2K and these players, Kirby. Try making these players a pawn and making them do that all the time. I don't think they'll do it, dude. I don't think you'll ever get in such an extreme scenario.
Maybe. I mean, you're right, but you would get some of the lesser teams to become. They become a lot better, a lot faster when they all they have to do.
Could be.
So some of the tier 2 teams will like accelerate a lot faster, I think, in terms of learning how to play the game properly and as a team, because they won't have to. You're just literally calling for them.
FNS was on my team when we were on TSM, and like one of the things that that helped us at the early part, because we actually, like, in my opinion, we kind of like exceeded expectations in the first like maybe 6 or 7 months of the team or something. The first like 2 or 3 months we didn't really do much, but it was more like, you know, brand new team, pracking, whatever. But we did make a lot of improvements in my opinion. And one of the things that happened was like we switched for me calling, but the thing that would happen was Valens would always direct the young ones like on the mid rounds. So what would happen is we'd have a strat on train or whatever, and Valens would always be the guy being like, yo, get ready to go Ivy. Like he would give them like the timing calm, like because he knew what I wanted. Like he knew, but you know, when you're in game leader, you can tell them to go, but like you know, if you're in box halls and they're Ivy, like you could look at radar and shit, but you don't know like are they actually like doing like the timing that they should. And another thing was like regardless of T side, like CT side on Cobble and stuff, he'd be like, all right, you guys have like lost drop, take upper B plat, like get the fuck over to stairs, like you know, he would just tell them like where to go, or like tell them to give up something, tell them to over rotate. So, you know, every once in a while he'd lose us around because he'd be like, yo, just stack this, and then like, you know, obviously like they just hit the other site and everyone's mad. But I mean, you can't really blame someone for making a bad call if they're making right calls more than often than not. But I think that helped like tremendously, honestly, like because Twist back then he didn't calm. Like FNS can probably vouch for this. Like he literally didn't say anything. Like at the start of the team,
was he like a 15-year-old kid or something though?
Yeah, no, I'm not mad about it or anything.
Okay,
you know, you know, like it was just like
no, understandable, like, right? Yeah,
yeah, he was just like very quiet, and like Sick would calm a lot more, but he would calm like not when he's fighting. You know, when he's fighting, he's zone in. But I think even a lot of good players kind of have that problem. Is just like when they're in their battle, they're in their zone. It's whatever. But Twist would like not calm that people like fell down drop and stuff, and like those were big calms that like it doesn't matter if they're down there, like it's fine, you don't have to kill them. But like if I'm the A player holding top mid with an op and I just get die to the window, I'm like, oh, like what, like dude, I didn't know I wouldn't have been there, you know, like if I thought he could be there. And Valens was really good at just like being like he would calm for him. You know what I mean? For a long time and obviously we lost him, and then the coach thing happened at the same time, and I think that was too much, like for our team. Like it was just
we used to do that back in the day too. We had players who like in 2-on-2s they would their comms would go out the fucking window. Like they would have all of a sudden in a 2v2 they'd have shitty comms. Like
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
So we would have a coach. So our coach Garrett at the time, he would like there were certain players who would be like, okay, if this person's in a 2-on-2, Garrett's calming for them. Like he's gonna say what they see because like he can't say what they hear obviously, but he can say what they see because
that's what I'm saying. Like if it was a little polished, like retakes would be so much more polished. People throwing the right nades in those retakes would be polished. Like, yo, this guy's a molly, this guy's a flash. This guy wouldn't even have to look at his
Pretty
utility.
much just
You
saying
tell
all
him
that's going to
what he
happen is better CS. That's all I'm hearing.
I'm loving what he's saying. It sounds great to me.
Me
Yeah,
too.
like,
I like
show me
it.
these games. Yeah.
I mean, I think it because I feel like the game is developing, right? And I feel like players are getting a lot better. So I just think if you like, you're just making them think less. Somebody is literally thinking for you. It's just a matter of you applying at that point.
Do you think they're thinking less, or you think they're learning faster?
I don't, because they're not calming. I feel like, I mean, they could be learning, but it's the comms that like really matter, right? And a lot of players, like Corey was saying, like a lot of these players don't calm what they're doing, but they might be doing the right play. They just aren't communicating to their teammates. So the timings are off because of that.
Okay, here's
and I
the
feel
thing,
like
though.
that would be changed.
Like, I agree, like, as a general principle, especially in an abstract sense, it's like we're not naming the player that's coming here. We're just talking like, here's what they could do. Like, hypothetically, yeah, I agree. It sounds like it would put a lot of power in the coach's hands. But dude, like, think about how many pro players, they don't even want you to say anything when they're in a 1v1.
Exactly. That's
like I actually always had that problem myself whenever I played. It's not even that the comm's wrong. I just don't like the fact that I'm going through my thought process, and then when someone says like, dude, you should probably go back now, I'm like, I'm trying to like stop fucking short circuiting my brain. I'm trying to think through. You fucking me up.
Well,
Shut up.
Well, I don't know if you watch soccer or European football or even like any like relevant sport, right? The coach is responsible for the team winning. Like the coaches get sacked like this in European football or soccer. It's because those are the right. But you know what I mean? Like those coaches are the first to go, and in my opinion, that should be the case in CS as well. Like those coaches are responsible for whether your team wins or loses. So at the end of the day, it only strengthens the argument that coach has to go if your team isn't winning, and because he's making all the calls at the end of the day, right? So the players just have to like accept that's the play style. And then if some certain teams don't want a coach, then that's up to them, right? But the teams that do want to develop and have a coach and like want those comps to be, you know, they don't want to calm themselves, they want other people calming for them, or there's specific players that can't talk while like shooting or whatever it might be. If they choose to get that coaching system, then that coach could take responsibility for everything, like all the comms, everything going right, everything going wrong. At the end of the day, if the team isn't doing well, you fire the coach, get another one, or you just don't do the coaching thing at all. But I just think that at the end of the day, especially for worse teams, like some of the tier 2 teams or teams that are just on the brink, it would help them like accelerate a lot faster because of that little adjustment of like not having to calm everything and then having basically someone telling you, consistently adapting for you, and just being like, hey, they just do this nade Ivy, do this. But yes, like you guys, I agree with your point that if there would be a coach on the other side as well.
Well, also in this scenario that you're explaining, the coach is always making the right comms. That might not necessarily be the case either.
No, I'm not. I'm saying if it's not right, and you lose, like
right.
You're fucked, right? But
yeah,
I'm saying,
exactly.
Like,
so
you already
I think,
made.
So how many times,
like whether to have one or not?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, Davey gave the example of Garrett coming for people, so yeah, you would get fired.
Yeah, exactly. At that point, like if he's not doing a good enough job, or he doesn't have enough knowledge in the game to adapt the right way or say the right things at the right time,
Harmless banter.
Then you have to go. You gotta go.
Yeah, so what I'm, where I was going with that was your players aren't going to. I wouldn't rely on a coach to make my comms for me 100% of the time. I wouldn't.
Well, think about it. You're not used to it right now. That's the thing. Like this is a new thing that hasn't ever happened before. So imagine you implement that and be like, you know what? Let's try this.
Well, you'd have to have 5 coaches to do that. You'd have to have 5 coaches coming for each person.
But you don't even know. You haven't even attempted doing this at a full scale yet. You have no idea if this would work or not. Is my point.
Well, but they literally can't. Like a coach cannot calm for every player in the server all at once.
I'm not saying calm everything for all 5
That's what
players.
right.
You're not retarded. You're not going to be able to not calm everything.
I fucking hope not.
He's getting a bit heated now.
Well, what I'm saying is that, like, obviously, I don't want you to calm. Oh, I'm throwing this smoke. Like, you could do that. That's not hard. Sure. But in intense situations, like retakes and like 3v3 situations where players are so like have to clear every angle, all this. That coach could just be like, hey, all right, you do this molly at the same time this guy throw this smoke, and just call that mini strat that otherwise wouldn't be called.
I feel like a lot of people. I feel like if a coach tried to do that, though, a lot of players would tell him to shut up. I'd be like, dude, shut up.
And I agree with you. That's the problem.
He would lose you rounds at the start.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and that's the thing that you have to. That's a system that you have to like implement and see if it works or not for certain teams, and it might not work for teams that have a lot of egos or players that think that they know better than the coach. You know what I mean? There's a lot that could go wrong, which is why that's not a perfect system. But I think at the end of the day, if perfected, it would be OP as fuck.
Well, I'm saying,
it's your actual position though, FNS, the one of just talking the freestyle though. Should he be allowed to do that?
Yeah. And I don't think that there should be coaching where like you just fucking talk the whole time. It should just be freeze time. Sure. I think freeze time calling, fair enough.
But at
That's
least
it.
it's better than what we currently have, though. At least,
Yeah,
right?
No, for sure.
No,
Well,
I feel
my-
bad
my-
for coaches,
cancer
honestly.
up.
Like thinking about being a coach, like it must be boring. Like a lot of the times, like not in scrims perhaps, like because you can talk a lot. We have a mod on our server where our coach can actually like not talk when it's live, but when you're dead, he can talk to us. Because they actually fucked up and like coaches just can't talk to you at all. So they'd be like messaging you on Steam for a long time.
Oh
Like,
yeah, typing, right?
hey, and you're like, yeah, and you're like, oh, okay, like I just want to talk to my coach, like, because sometimes you want to be like, is that a good idea? Like, what did you think? But and then you have to wait, and it's just like annoying. But the mod kind of fixes that. But I just think like I feel bad for coaches honestly, because like at events you're just standing there for most of the time. Like you like you said, you get like those 2 to 4 timeouts, like, and then even the timeouts, half the time coaches take timeouts, and I don't know if players realize it, it's mostly to calm players down. Like a lot of the time, they're saying like, you guys relax, like we lost 4 rounds in a row, we're still in this, like, just like maybe they'll give like a vague idea, but like I'm not saying they don't make like big changes or like have ideas. But a lot of CS is like pressure on players of like I think coaches can tell when people are tilting better than like the in-game leader or someone else can, because they're focused on their game, and like maybe the coach is looking over this guy and this guy's looking real pissed off, like he's looking like really down or emo or something, and I definitely think that can like play a factor. Like we even lost to Ty Lue at the ROG Masters thing, and in my opinion we should have won the cash game, and our coach kept trying to tell us like calm down, and we just like couldn't. Like we kept making mistakes, and it was just like
I'm just thinking of scenarios right now as like if I was a coach that was allowed to speak the entire fucking time, and my team was in a 3v5 situation on T side, and like I just feel like there would be so many ideas in my brain because that's all I'm thinking about, that like I would just see the position of my players and be able to call something while they fully focus on their game. I feel like that's so easy to do. Like that's such a fucking easy thing that I already do that when I'm in game leading a team. Imagine me not even having to play CS and just watching even one player because I know where the other players are based on the strat that was called. Like it'd just be a joke. Like I feel like you're expected.
Let me ask you. Here's the thing though. Like in a way, what you've done is say the opposite to what I said, which is I said that actually with the current rules, it just makes basically someone who can do what you could do now in game OP in its own way. It's OP to have Glaive because guess what? Right. Cloud9 doesn't have a coach, but they don't have fucking Glaive in game either.
That's true.
You know what I mean? It's like something's OP no matter what.
Right. That's fair.
Yeah. Trying to tell me Tarik's not Glaive?
Is that what you're trying to say, bro?
He got. I actually like Tarik as a person, right? He's an easygoing guy.
Hilarious.
But he got like actually triggered that people keep saying that like peanut brain meme. It's like people are acting like I'm stupid. It's like, listen, you're not stupid. You're also not exactly a fucking physics professor, right? Come on, son. Come on, son.
All right.
He's definitely improved a lot, and his like even his like the way C9 plays, I could tell that like there's obvious that they don't do dumb shit.
No,
like
they're
all the
trying
players
to
are
get
pretty
better.
smart as well. Like right, and I feel like they're not doing dumb shit. It's just like a lot of the times, I don't know. I just feel like maybe a better coach. I don't know. Never mind. I'm not gonna say it.
All right. All right. Closing thoughts. Thoorin.
I think
right.
Cloud9's roster is weird. I don't know.
Listen, I've already made my thoughts clear. Put FNS on Cloud9. There we go. Problem solved.
Here.
For who though?
Take your pick. Start with Skadoodle because personality.
FNS, you opping, dude? You opping?
No one's off.
Yes, I want to see FNS calling off, dude. That's what I want.
Absolutely not. I would literally have zero impact with this gun. I'd just be holding an angle forever and then save at the end. Just take full cold status. Just no intention of
no
impact.
kills.
no
But with
kills.
none of the
Zero.
kills.
Okay, I don't want to open a whole can of worms, but I think having a dedicated Awper is one of the most overrated roles in the fucking game. Like most teams don't need that. Like if you have it, you do it because you've got Kenny S.
I think you need it once you get to the top level.
No, but my point is you need someone who can AWP, but you don't need a dedicated AWPer. Like, why does this guy have to every round have the gun if you have the money? Why doesn't Tarik have the gun if it's on T side of Train and then on, I don't know, Mirage, maybe Stewie 2K wants to be the guy who's the T side AWPer,
Listen, I personally agree
Maybe it causes
with you,
inconsistency.
but I think it kind of screws up strats just because then the role gets swapped around. I think if you had different people up on different maps consistently, it would be fine. Like,
yeah, but here's the thing: we're not comparing it against the option to have Kenny S. We're saying the option of Skadoodle.
Yeah, okay, but
isn't that more of a trade?
I mean, I personally, I don't think Ska's as bad as people think. I think he's just.
I'm trying to get someone to the team. I'm trying to get an in-game lead. I have to cut someone.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
I mean,
But
who
are
cutting
you
instead?
but were you trying to say that you think that like Tarik should op on Mirage and then like Stewie ops on Train, or are you saying that they should just pick it up depending on like who
I don't know which
feels
they're going to
it?
do it, mate. They'd have. I think you could try either, right?
Yeah. I just like I think anyone can kind of op that has good skill personally. Like I definitely think that if you have good aim, like you can hit op shots, right? But I do think like there's something when you're doing a default, if like someone that normally goes Ivy decides to pick up an op, then like it kind of fucks things up. You know what I mean?
I would rather it was I see what you mean now, right? I don't mean as in like one game in the middle of the game. Tarik's like, I'm open now, T-side. No, it's more like, right, I op T-side Mirage because I'm good.
No,
at
okay, yeah.
you know.
I agree with that. That I think you could have different people op on different maps. The only thing I think you get with a benefit of like a strict opper that always ops is they just understand where to be a little bit better than, you know, like I think, you know, some like Tarik, they could run around a corner and just get a 4K, like just hit nut shots. But on CT side, there is a little bit depending on like, if you watch Kenny, you know, he'll take a shot, fall back, take another shot, fall back, take another, you know, he's always repositioning himself. And a lot of like second oppers don't, they just go repeak another shot and they just get as many as they can until they die.
I definitely foresee Stewie calling for C9 soon.
I think he should call personally. I think they play their. I think he plays better when he calls.
Oh, he definitely does. That's one of the things we learned, right? Is that it looked like I understand why people wanted to go this way because, like, admittedly, when he was calling in like 2016 or whatever, the team was a lot worse. And obviously he was like a new player. So it looked like, right, oh, imagine if he was doing all this exact same shit, but he didn't have to call. But what we actually learned was he himself's going to be less impactful if he doesn't call, you know. Doesn't seem like he's as great a player himself. He's just a good player without calling.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I agree. I think he's good. I just think like he set himself up a little bit better on T side, and their strats were slightly different, I guess.
I think he just naturally understands the game a little bit better than everyone else on the team. Maybe it just looks that way. Like I just based on hearing him speak about the game and stuff, it just seems that way. I don't know.
Plus all those Launders videos you watched.
What's that?
Plus any Launders video you watched on the topic.
Is he a fan of Stewie?
He just did this one video where, like, dude, go and find this video. Because here's the thing, it's a very well-produced video, like, super slick. He did it for Yahoo Esports. It's this round that Stewie2K does on Cash, where he sort of, like, pushes behind some people and gets a bunch of kills with the UMP. And I always make fun of Launders for it, because here's the thing. Like, there definitely was some kind of, like, intuitive smarts to what Stewie2K did. But Launders does that thing where he goes in, like, slow-mo. And he's like, what he's doing now is he's calculated that when he kills this guy here, there cannot be a guy for 1 second behind him. He moves, shoots 4 bullets. He knows he's going to, like... Dude, listen, I know what you're trying to do there, but like no one's thinking like that. Like, don't tell me that when Flasher does a round like that, inside his brain, he's thinking any of that shit. He's just going like,
yeah, he's hitting the key.
There's nothing. Yeah. He's a genius. Yeah. He's an idiot savant.
All right, so in closing, since we've been here this is the longest episode we've ever done. So, Thoorin, thanks for coming on. What does 2018 entail for you?
Probably just more of the same. Do some events, hopefully do some of the big ones, do loads more content. Might even, if I can, squeeze it in. Probably won't. I'm not really that interested. Watch some Counter-Strike, maybe watch some of the games I talk about. Yeah. Probably just...
Plan on going back to Poland anytime soon.
You know.
Definitely be back in Poland, you know.
What about Brazil?
Poland, Brazil. Going to all the Polish and Brazilian events.
Here's the difference, right? People don't know this, actually. I don't not go to the Polish events because I actually think I would be, like, attacked in the street and fucking strung up. No. Obviously, I think that... By the way, I don't think people were even that mad. I think in that moment, they were mad. And you have to understand the context. At the time, I wasn't, like, a well-known person. I was, like, a behind-the-camera person. I wasn't, like, a personality. So, for example... No one knew any of that was banter. They thought it was all a serious statement. So I think nowadays I can even say the same shit and people don't get that mad, you know. They just sort of go, even if they don't like me, they're like, he's a fucking idiot, isn't he? So I actually do think that would be fine. Polish people seem pretty reasonable. There was never a country I had a problem with. I just thought it was a shit Eastern European country. Still do. But the difference is, I'm not going to Brazil anyway, mate. It has like a murder rate of like 60,000 people a year. Like, shit. I'm just going to say, you know what? I could go to any other country. I could do 20 events a year. I could do every major. I'll just go ahead and skip those 3 Brazilian tournaments in my life and continue my long life.
I had an ex-girlfriend who was from Sao Paulo, and she like I'm not even trying to trash Brazil. I feel like I'm trashing Brazil now, and I feel like I'm just gonna get a wave of fucking Brazilian.
Maybe your story is the same as mine because I'm not going to say the players so they don't get wrecked, but every player I know from Brazil who's maybe a famous player, maybe isn't, whoever these guys are, 4 or 5 guys that I've had the chance to talk to privately, not on camera, they all have a story about how someone who was one of their friends has been murdered, usually with gun.
Well, she had one of those, which I'm not going to tell, but she had her phone stolen from her 3 times standing at a bus stop. Just standing, like you're waiting there at a bus stop. She has her phone hidden somewhere, and some guy comes up to her with a gun and says, "Where's your phone? Where are you hiding it? Give it to me."
But think about it though. If you
and that's happened to her 3. That happened to her 3 times.
Right? If you've killed someone, had someone killed, a clutch in CS no big deal anymore, right? Like like it's not that nervous anymore, right? Like.
So that's why Fur can switch all the way out like that. He's like, listen, I'm not even supposed to be alive right now.
No, Fur has some crazy stories about where he's from.
Here's the thing, Semphis, though, that's the problem. Surely this should apply to FNS now. I mean, he's not supposed to be alive right now. He fucking...
I'm not going over there. 100%.
You have ultimate confidence now, FNS. You were supposed to die in fucking Montreal.
I know that.
Whatever.
Tell me twice.
But the thing is, FNS is quick, you know, like...
We out here.
Yeah, he's a lot more nimble than he looks.
Yeah.
We honestly, I count my lucky stars. That I put into him.
Well, you know, I always said, I told TSM when we first joined, right, that they should take away our passports and all our money. They should just drop us in Brazil, right? And if we get back, we'll be a top team. But they didn't.
Basically.
But they didn't buy it. Also, when I was on Complexity, I begged Jason Lake to buy Simple, but he was too toxic apparently, so I couldn't do it. Not that he maybe wouldn't have joined anyways, but.
All right. So that is it for Picker's Advantage, episode 7. Thoorin, do you have anything you want to say before we end it?
Corral Hall.
Okay, that's a good one.